I started to put some of the pieces together because I'd produced the Illuminati CFR records in 1967 with Myron Fagan, talking about a conspiracy to rule the world. And I think the bottom line of all of this is this New World Order. Adolf Hitler's second book was called The New World Order. Hitler talked about 1,000-year Reich. Bush talks about 1,000 points of light. They're talking about a millennium. And I read years ago the tag end of 2010. And what seemed strange to me was this thing sort of connected when the current issue of Life magazine came out. That's the September issue, and it talks about $100 million expenditure for the NASA SETI program, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. In there, they talk on about October 12th, the 500th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to the United States, or to discover America. And I thought, something is ringing here insofar as time, because these Illuminists are very time-oriented. They're very date-oriented. On May 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt put together the Illuminati papers. And Jordan, you have seen the front cover of the Illuminati papers. You want to tell them a little bit about it?
It was an interesting point that in Europe there is a depository for the original writings of the order and sect of the Illuminati. The original handwritten letters by Adam Weishaupt, who founded this secret society in Europe. And on the face cover of the page, the front page in the museum, is the actual circle with the pyramid that's on the dollar bill, on the back of the dollar bill, with the Annuit Coeptus and Novus Ordo Seclorum. All of it is identical to what is on the back of the $1 bill, and this was back in the European depository. So we know that that symbol on the back of the dollar bill, on the left-hand side of the back of the dollar bill, though it was put on the $1 bill in about, what was it, 33, 34, is in fact much older, going all the way back to 1774, 1775. So we know there's something going on here with this emblem on an American dollar bill. And when you get into the symbolism and the founding of America and what's going on today and the terms that are being used, symbols are like letters of an alphabet. If you put them together, they spell a word, and you put enough of them together and they tell you a story. And if you don't understand the symbols, you're not going to understand the story that's being unfolded in front of you. So we'll talk a lot about that in a little bit later.
So this reverse seal of the United States of America has nothing to do with the United States of America. It has to do with the formation of the Illuminati. The Illuminati was to do in darkness what Christianity was supposed to do in the light. This is a satanic organization. I mean satanic. It is the reverse seal of the United States. It was brought onto our currency at the insistence of a fellow named Henry Wallace, Vice President of the United States under FDR. Henry Wallace had at the end of the hallway in the White House a little shrine to Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Blavatsky is the publisher, or was the publisher, and co-editor with Annie Besant of Lucifer magazine. Now, I've had Lucifer magazine in my hand, the bound leather works of Lucifer. There's no question about it. That is, in fact, the truth. It is, in fact, the truth that this Illuminati program has been in existence since the creation of this country. And Jordan explained a little bit about the Goat of Mendez, and if you could, if you were flying above Washington, D.C., and you look down upon Washington, D.C., you'll see this Goat of Mendez.
If you, as we said, if you fly over Washington, D.C., and you don't have to do this, you can just go to a library and get a magazine or books that they have in libraries of the cities, large cities of the United States from the air, which I've done and which I should have brought pictures with me tonight. You find, first of all, that the obelisk, which is Cleopatra's Needle, the obelisk, and the long river in front of it is called the River Styx, which is the river that Pharaoh was supposedly to go to heaven on. And then directly above that is, of course, the Capitol building. But what's interesting is that the two boulevards going to the Capitol form a triangle or a pyramid. And then at the top of the pyramid is a little waterway that cuts off, and a street that cuts off the Capitol from the rest of the pyramid. It is all laid out in Masonic symbolism. And of course, Virginia, where we have the Pentagon. The Pentagon is actually the pentagram, which is used in satanic worship, the pentagram. And the way the Pentagon is laid out is so that the North Star Thuban is being pointed to by the Pentagon. And it all has to do with some very secret societies like the Freemasonic orders that founded this country. And when you understand what the Freemasons, who they are, what the Freemasonic orders are, how they developed in this country, the Rosicrucians, and their connection with the Illuminati, you begin to see these, as he brings up, the Godo Mendez is laid out in the city of Washington, D.C. There is a tremendous amount of occult symbolism laid out in the nation's capital. And of course, then you have to find out why the Capitol is called the White House, why the president's residence is called the White House. And it has to do with the same seat of power in England called Whitehall. Whitehall and White House have to do with white magic as opposed to black magic, and it has some...
Also, new house of the people called the Whitehall.
Good. That's it. Well, and the new flag for the new country is red, white, and blue. So there's a tremendous amount of occult symbolism going on in this world, and we're not even aware of it, and we're not being made aware of it. But there are people in this world who do know what's going on, and we're going to have to tell you some of that tonight.
Now, how does all of this tie in with this whole UFO phenomena? If we take a look at this event that that Carl Sagan is talking about, that will occur, we are talking about not the discovery of the New World, but we're talking about the discovery of the other worlds and the creation of the New World Order. If after October 12th, that's coming up, we have a discovery of extraterrestrial life or intelligence through this CETI program, we're going to have panic in this country like you've never seen. And we're going to have some people move for the abolition of the United States of America and the creation of a new world order, a one world government upon the ashes of this once great country. And how can this possibly happen? Well, if they get radio waves coming in from outer space, they can say, well, we found that there's extraterrestrial intelligence. But I think they're going to go one more. They're going to go one better. I had two listeners. One fellow called Mafia Mike. He had a whole chain of pizza places up in Alaska. One girl who was a listener of mine up at KEAG, Radio Free America, and still one other. And the three of them, what? So I'm going to continue from where I was. These three people went up at the base of the Groom Mountains in the Tickaboo Valley. They went over Hancock Pass, they looked down upon the Tickaboo Valley, they went out the Groom Road, they went out to the base of the mountains, which is right outside Area 51, which is the most top secret saucer test site in the United States of America. And I say that this is a saucer test site because of the literally thousands of people who've now gone up there and taken pictures. The Wackenhut SS, which is controlled by a group called the Russell Trust, which also controls the Skull and Bones, which also controls Life magazine through, this is Henry Luce's publication.
Also see that Wackenhut was a blacklisting organization that people need to contribute. The Wackenhut agency is one of to find out what your political and other affiliations are, you know, 2 or 3 weeks if they want to.
Well, I'm sure that they can. There's an article in this current issue of Spy magazine with Madonna on the cover This is inside the shadow CIA. And the Wackenhut Hut is made up of DIA, ISA, NSA, DEA individuals. We're talking about a real killer corps out here who harasses people who go up to the Tikaboo Valley to see the saucers. Now, that particular day when these three individuals on a Wednesday night about 2 months ago went up to Area 51, was confronted with two individuals from two different Broncos, fellows dressed in desert fatigues. They had M15s or M16s, fully automatic weapons, no identification, no license plates. They had little tape recorders with them. They asked to see the license plates, driver's licenses. They took down the license plates. They went through a whole series of standard investigative acquisition. They were asking for the social security numbers of the individuals. They asked if they had any cameras, and they wanted to see them. They wanted to go through their cars. Then they said that, well, this is a very dangerous place, folks. If you're just coming up here to look at the night sky, there could be a bomb, or because this used to be a test site. So they tried to intimidate them. They tried to harass them. They, in fact, did harass them. In spite of that, they said, no, we're just going to sort of stay here and take a look at the night sky. The Wackenhut Hut operates under no authority whatsoever. And this, last month, I initiated a program against the Wackenhut Hut SS, and I sent a letter out to Patty Caparata, who's the Lincoln County District Attorney. Lincoln County is the area in which Area 51 exists. They call it Dreamland. Below Area 51, or the Groom Lake facility, is an area called S4, where Robert Lazar talks about the 9 craft that are being tested there. These are extraterrestrial. He said, now this is the letter to Mrs. Caparata. He says, I am calling on the Attorney General of the State of Nevada to initiate an immediate full-scale grand jury investigation into the activities of the Wackenhut Hut SS, your office, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department. The reason for the urgency of this action is because of the rapidly increasing number of life-threatening situations created by unidentified paramilitary personnel who operate under the color of law to harass, intimidate, and suppress the constitutional rights of many hundreds of American citizens and Japanese nationals who come to view the unidentified flying saucer-shaped disc being tested over your county. It is my prayer that with the prodding of the people and the press, that the Attorney General will launch this investigation in time to avert one of these innocent individuals from being murdered by that paramilitary mob or winding up as a permanent prisoner in one of the strange underground experimental laboratories below Dreamland and S4 within the Nellis Test Range. This goes on for 12 pages. There has been helicopters that have gone over there that have buzzed these people. In the morning after this particular night that they spent up there, they looked up, and about 12 to 15 feet above the car, there is a black helicopter, a fellow leaning over with a big giant box. I don't know what the hell he was beaming down on them, or they were taking pictures or what. But they were there. They were harassing these people. And on another occasion, there's 2 or 3 or 4 cars going down the road, and another helicopter buzzed them. I don't know if you've seen North by Northwest with Cary Grant in the field being buzzed by the biplane. Well, they were doing this with helicopters. The Wackenhut Hut SS is very concerned about a discovery of what's going on out there. Well, these 3 people stayed. They put their lawn chairs out looking at the night sky. They heard about 5 minutes, 10 minutes after the Wackenhut Hut SS boys left, a rumbling from behind them, coming from the area where the Groom Lake facility is located. And this rumbling they described as sort of like an earthquake, and sort of like a subway, but not quite like either. It was something that was unique, but it was loud, and it was massive, and it came directly underneath them and across the Tikaboo Valley, and they felt like the earth was hollow underneath them. In 10 minutes, within 10 minutes they looked up in the sky, and here was, excuse me, I said 10 minutes, I mean 10 seconds. This girl said, "Oh my God," and she looked up, and that began what has to be described as the most spectacular light show ever witnessed by anyone that I've ever heard of in the UFO field. For about an hour and 10 minutes, they watched 24, 25 different craft going all over the sky. A huge nova they described as about the sixth the size of the moon, out about 15 miles in the Tikaboo Valley along Highway 375. And from that, there were different balls of light, and there were craft everywhere. They were just simply blown away. Mafia Mike described the event as more spectacular than the wildest Steven Spielberg movie he had ever seen. Now, why am I talking about this? I think what these three people witnessed was a dress rehearsal for a mock or planned alien invasion that's going to come down sometime in the very near future. They were watching a show. This thing was set up like you do a movie, and they were simply blown away. Now, the girl had in her belly pouch a little camera, Instamatic. They didn't find that. She put the camera on top of the car. This is one of the craft that sort of sailed across the night sky, and all you get is a light trail. It appeared to be smooth, and it just sort of drifted over, and it was a 10-second exposure. She did another one, and here's another craft that started up and drifted across the sky. It was on top of the car. This is not her, shaking like this. My God, let's take a look at these things. Here she is describing these particular craft, and they're talking about 24, 25 craft. This girl is not crazy. She's not nuts. She's not wacko. They turned around. They picked up this one, and it's hard to see, but it's like a huge blob of light. She just simply snapped it away. If they were allowed to have a good quality video camera and great still cameras in their possession with maybe 500 millimeter lenses, they would have the best UFO photos ever. And if the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department says, "Hey, nothing's going on up there. They're out there 365 days a year, 365 nights a year." They say, "Ain't nobody here but us chickens." So I was over in the Little Alien in Rachel, Nevada. The sheriff's truck was parked from about here to across the hall. And I'm looking up at the sky and said, "That thing doesn't look like a plane." And I went out and snapped this little picture. That's the light trail you see and the configuration of the craft with the three pods underneath. This is from the parking lot of the Little Alien. That place is alive with activity. On December 26th of this last year, two fellows went up there after seeing, they went up Christmas, and they saw a spectacular show, Christmas Day, Christmas night. They went out about a mile and a half from the Little Alien. I think it's about a half mile to the south on Highway 375 and about a mile off the road. They found the largest cattle mutilation ever recorded, and they've got about 28 minutes of film. The cattle were rectally cored, the genitals were cut out, they were drained of the blood, one eye was gone, half the tongue was out. The standard so-called satanic event. It is my opinion, from talking to the people up there at the Little Alien, who talk to the individuals who go out and come back and forth, that they have some sort of genetic engineering program going on at S4. I'm talking about a Frankenstein factory that exists with a small army of Igors, and I call these guys the invisible government's obedient robotons, working day in and day out to put some sort of event together which is going to scare the hell out of the people. And I take a look at this Life magazine, the current issue. It just makes sense that this thing is coming down, and is coming down fast. So as a consequence, I've done a show with Vladimir, and we did this for 3 hours. This is on KLAS in Las Vegas, the Lou Epton Show, and Wake Up America. I was on it on 2 other... The Peter C. Well, particular thing. Now, whether the aliens are manufactured in some sort of Frankenstein factory or they're from outer space, I have no idea. I'm not an authority on this. But I know one thing for sure. From the documentation that comes out in publications on the thing called Operation Paperclip, and here's page after page after page that exist showing that the various Nazi doctors that worked in the Frankenstein factories there, and I'm talking about the ones that were run by Dr. Mengele and company, were brought over here to the United States, some 1,500. And I go down to the last page in this particular piece of material. Yes.
Right. They couldn't wait for the war to end and bring them back.
Now this is a thing called blowback, and we were talking about a fellow named John McCloy, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, one of the Trilat boys. And they were going back to 1951. McCloy announced the recommendations of this task force in January 1951, only a few days after Seoul had fallen to communist forces. He began by acknowledging the enormity of the crimes committed by the prisoners at Landsberg and called for stern measures against them. Then he turned around. He called for the execution of 2 of them. And then he turned around and released 79 major Nazi war criminals, all convicted concentration camp doctors. I'm saying that, in my opinion, there is a growing amount of evidence to support the existence of an American Auschwitz in Nevada. And I mean just this. I'm talking about experiments on children. I'm talking about the milk carton kids. I'm talking about those good little darlings who you see posted lamp posts.
What's the number of kids missing per year? Do you have any?
Well, I've taken a look at the records. I called to Child Find of America, and they talked about some million or so missing kids. But when it gets down to the bottom line, it's between 80 and 100,000 missing kids, which can't be attributed to the murder by some psychopathic maniac who's serving up a child on his dinner plate, or some girl that's in a shallow grave in some lonely town in Alaska. I'm talking about 80 to 100,000 missing children per year.
I've heard stories of 400,000. I called the milk carton 800 number, and the lady gave me an estimate of 200,000 every year missing children.
The FBI and the Justice Department have stopped taking in the records. But if, in fact, this Frankenstein factory or Frankenstein factories exist, we're talking about some deep and heavy material here. In Hamilton's book, and I'm going to give you just a little piece of this Hamilton's book, he talks about, he's quoting a fellow named Thomas C., and he talks about the Dulce facility. He says, principal government organizations involved with mapping human genetics, the so-called genome projects, are within the Department of Energy, which has a heavy presence on the Nevada test site. They've got 2 shafts out there that I know of that are 2 miles deep. It was when Thomas encountered humans in cages on level 7 at the Dulce facility that things finally reached a climax for him. He goes on to say, row after row of thousands of humans, human mixture remains, and embryos of humanoids were kept in cold storage. He says, I frequently encountered humans in cages, usually dazed or drugged, but sometimes they cried and begged for help. We were told they were hopelessly insane and involved in high-risk drug tests to cure insanity. We were told never to speak to them at all. At the beginning, we believed that story. I'm saying that there is a good, solid possibility that there is an American Auschwitz existent today. I'm saying that if Frankenstein factories do exist, and those of you who are here and hear this story should get involved in exposing this story. And I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about getting on the two-way talk shows and getting the material that's at hand that you're going to hear from the people here tonight, and working with this. Out of Operation Paperclip, which brought these 1,500 men over here, they brought over scientists who were involved in atomic energy. Werner von Braun, you know him. They talked about the rocketry thing. Of course, they talked about the flying disc, and that's what Vladimir is going to talk to you about. They had all sorts of strange and wild things. Al Bielek, he's living proof. I've never been there. I've never been through what he's been through. And I wouldn't want to. It's like living hell. But in my opinion, we must incite a revelation or avoid or face a revolution. And I put out an article called Lucifer 2000. I want to get into that, and I'll get into that later, but I think it's time that... What? The Lucifer 2000 article is not published as of yet. It is in the process of being typeset as we speak, and will be published for the first time in the People's Press, which is out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And the second publication will be the National Educator. And I will have probably 200 articles sent out across the country. And this gets into really a spectacular story which involves the current issue of Life magazine, and involves the last article in the piece by Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2010. And I think it's really probably time we give this thing over to Al Bielek. Al, do you want to state your experience? No, I should speak up. Maybe is it 395?
395. I'd like to give a little background on this business of the children's program, if I may use that term in that sense. Many of you may know of the history of Nazi Germany, and during the time when it was in its heyday, there was a program instituted by Hitler and company to try and create a super race. This program went under various names in Germany. There were children who were taken from their parents at an early age, were trained in special camps, allegedly to develop certain capabilities. When Germany lost the war, this program was moved to the United States and to Brazil. There were two sections to this program. The first one went to Brazil. It's still in operation near Brasilia and has been called Project Prometheus. And this transfer was made immediately after the war, and the program was continued. Another part of it went to the United States, originally in the Everglades in Florida, and in recent years, when I presume the questions being asked by local people, because Florida's population expanded enormously after World War II, they found it convenient to transfer this program to Dulce. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of the milk carton kids and the whole problem related to this, of people disappearing and young children disappearing and no trace ever being found. The latest word is that the larger part of this program, at least from Florida, was transferred to Dulce. The alien operations are largely gone there and is now totally, or almost totally, U.S. government operations, with the Dulce facility being extended in terms of its underground levels from the original 7 to about 17. And this is where you will find a major part of the program going. Now, insofar as the Brazilian side is concerned, I have a friend who is a product of that program. And I'll give you a little bit of details and data on this, because he has spoken himself openly of it, does not deny any part of it. He was born of Brazilian parents. He is today 23 of age. And he was taken from those parents at a very early age.
By force or?
I do not know that part of the story or the details. And he was placed in this center, if you will, part of the Prometheus program, where he was raised practically as a baby for the next 10 years without any contact with any human being whatsoever. He was in a room where everything was automated. His food came in on a tray. When he was finished eating, it was removed on a conveyor belt. The toilet facilities and the bath facilities were fully automated. He was taught by TV screen, computer, and holographic projection. Somehow at the age of about 12, he got out of this. I've never found out from him the details of how he broke out or how he was removed. But he came to the outside world, made some human contacts, and today, of course, he is rather juvenile in his emotional aspects, never having known human affection, whatever, for 12 years of his life. But he has some very strange characteristics. This guy has metaphysical psychic abilities like you wouldn't believe. Now, whether this was attempted to be developed by the government operation or whether this is a byproduct, I don't know. But he has been, in fact, I met him originally at Wendell Stevens' operation, the original conference at Tucson, Arizona, a year and a half ago. And his name is Jeff D'Souza. He's fairly well known all over the world. He somehow managed to get to New York, met somebody in the UN, told him his story. The guy was apparently waiting for him and set up a bank account for him, and apparently has not lacked for money since. When he became involved with me at the operation in Tucson, there were a lot of U.S. government agents there. The cars were all over the place. He was hounded once or twice. He went back to his current residence in Florida, decided he wanted to come to Phoenix and work with me and another person. He never made it to the airport at Miami, and actually at Tampa rather than Miami. Was abducted, went through hell for about 2 days, got out, and then eventually made it to Phoenix, quite literally battle-scarred, stripped of every shred of hair on his body, wounds obvious, puncture wounds, etc. on his body, and he had been very badly treated. He recovered from this. He was then hounded by his aunt. Then he was living with her when he returned to Florida. This was last spring. And due to the intervention of a certain former associate, whose name I will not use, the federal authorities, Bureau of Immigration and so forth, were advised that there was an alien living in Florida who did not have proper papers. They checked him out, found out he had proper papers, required that when his visa was up, he leave the U.S. and not return. Well, he went back to Europe for 3 months. He's now back in the U.S. He, I understand, married an American woman so that he was legally cannot be thrown out of the U.S. anymore. And he's still in Florida doing whatever he may be doing. But the man had some very interesting stories to tell about this operation, and this was first-hand experience and first-hand data from somebody who had lived through it. This operation is ongoing in Brazil and is also ongoing in the U.S. What the purpose is in Brazil may be different from the operation in the U.S., but this is an ongoing operation involving abductions of children by whatever means, tens of thousands, and if you include all of the UFO abductions that are done by Greys and others, the figures I have are that the abductions since the mass influx of Greys in about 1953-54 have risen from a few hundred a year to something over 1 million a year in the United States alone. It's rather a large figure. The estimates now are, of all of the abductees, we're now looking at something between 30 and 40% of the American public. Total population has been abducted in the last 30 years at least once. There is plenty of proof to show the abductions are an enormous number and figure because most of these people don't want to come forth and talk. The few who have tell the stories of other people and they bring others forward. But the program insofar as children is concerned is very interesting because this is probably tied in some manner, but we do not yet have the details. As to the children's program, if I may use that term very loosely, it was carried on at Montauk as part of the Phoenix Project. Now, I was part of the Phoenix Project, according to an ex-CIA agent from the beginning to the end, from 53 to 83, because they had a team of 2 CIA agents following me around for 30 years, which I was not aware of. I was not aware in that period of time that I was part of that project, insofar as Al Bielek was concerned in his outward life. I was sort of a double personality and leading a double life at that time, as did many other people as part of that project. Nonetheless, after it was over, memories eventually came back, and they're still coming back, starting in '86. One of the aspects of the Montauk Project, or the Phoenix Project, which we have yet to get to the bottom of and what it meant and what they were doing, was the abduction of young kids around the age of puberty. It varied from the age of 12 to about 17. originally picked up off Long Island from some of the families, and this was stopped because those families were in a position to raise holy hell when they found their kids had been abducted.
Picked up by force against the will of the parents and the kids.
Correct. So they went to picking up street kids, waifs, people who had no home and no roots, who were street kids, quite literally, from the big cities. The total number that were processed through Montauk, we estimate now at about 10,000, almost all blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids, Aryans, if you will. And since there were at one time 25 stations operating, all of the SAGE system stations have been converted to the Phoenix program. But they did not remain so converted and operational throughout the entire period of operation of Montauk. But if each one of those processed 10,000 kids, we're looking at 250,000 who were picked up, trained, processed after their abductions, implanted with a complete mind control implant situation via originally Reichian therapy techniques, later by electronics. And insofar as the Montauk operation was concerned, which is probably a model for the rest of them, in the earlier years these kids were beaten into submission. They were treated worse than the inmates at Auschwitz, because I just revisited 1 month ago the grounds where the kids were held in the pens, the steel pens in the underground facilities, which were actually not fully underground, but semi-underground from the old bunkers, which contained munitions at one time for World War II. Speaking in terms of astral awareness and going through there, I could see astrally the kids who died there from their beatings and from the mistreatment. I personally changed this program after I found out what was going on. I went up through the ranks and had it changed and threatened to expose this to the New York Times and the Long Island Daily Press if it wasn't changed, and it was changed. The program, we still do not understand the full purpose or what it was for. I do not know if this Montauk program was part of the larger Prometheus program or not. We do not have answers to this at this point. But nonetheless, these kids were picked up all over. They were sent back to where they came from. We know many of them were shipped ahead in time because they had the capability at the station, and were implanted for future use, future action, which I estimate, and this is my own gut feeling and estimate, probably to be, quote, turned on, unquote, in the year 95 or 96 to do whatever they are supposed to do. Some of these kids have turned up in Long Island, Phoenix, and elsewhere, totally unaware of what has happened to them. Some of them were aware of the fact that something happened to them. One of them, who was on Long Island, has since moved to Phoenix, was so badly beaten, he still has the scars on his shoulders. And this is years afterwards, because the program ended abruptly on the night of 12 August 1983. But this is a part of the children's program, the missing kids on the milk cartons and so forth, which we still don't have full answers for. But this is only one aspect. How many more other programs have there been operating that we, to this day, know nothing about? And who is really operating them? Now, insofar as the Nazi connection is concerned, the Montauk Project was 100% a Nazi program. It was paid for by Nazi gold abducted from Europe in 1944 in that famous railroad train that was blown up in the French railway tunnel on our side of the lines, killed 51 American GIs, and 10 billion in Reichsbank gold disappeared and was not found for 10 years. Turned up on a sinking ship outside of Montauk in 1954. Patton paid with his life for the investigation of what happened to this gold. And it was used to finance the Phoenix project after it finally got underway. 10 billion in gold at European prices in 1944 was in excess of 100 billion in the prices of the 60s and the 70s, particularly the 70s. And that was still not enough money. They ran out, and the rest of the program was financed privately by ITT Corporation, who was owned by the Krupps of Germany. The U.S. government never spent 1 cent, not one red dime or nickel or penny on this project. The CIA and the other intelligence agencies were fully cognizant of what was going on, and those military personnel who were loaned to the project had their salaries paid for out of other projects, so that nothing showed up in an oversight committee anywhere in the Congress or the Senate. And to this day, not even Senator Barry Goldwater, who became interested in this project, due to my alerting him through channels, hasn't been able to come up with all the answers, and they haven't found out yet how it was financed. We've told them, but I don't think they believe us yet. But there's many things that have gone on under the guise of the Fourth Reich, if we want to use that term, which are part of secret programs which are only beginning to show a little bit of what's going on, beginning to surface, and still leave us with many unanswered questions. At this point, I think there's much more we can talk about, but I want to turn this over to Vladimir for whatever comments he may have.
I'm sorry for...
There is no...
The mic goes for the...
This is simply for the television camera. So that's...
If you would like, you can sit forward and...
Maybe you can stand, Vladimir. That would be better.
Yeah. I'm sorry for being late tonight. We finished a little bit before 9, and by the time I dragged this stuff here. Actually, we have a Bulgarian proverb that says every bad is for good. By not giving me a workshop tonight, this is the first workshop that I'm organizing on my own. And I'm thinking, how have I been so dumb as not to organize these up to now? I would sit on a panel with party liners, given 5 minutes or 10 minutes, to lay down a picture that would take several of these workshops at 10 hours each to basically rewrite the whole view of our reality, the whole view of our planet. So I'm extremely glad that we are all here tonight, and from now on this would be the pattern. So I'm glad to present the first underground panel that has as its purpose to delineate between the party line, the government line, and the dissident line in American ufology and in conspiratorial ufology. As a dissident from Eastern Europe, as a political emigre from Bulgaria, this is the way I see the political reality in the universe from the conspiratorial perspective. Also, through the lectures that I've been giving at the local community center in Santa Monica, through the Graduate School of Ufology, we will be entering the second year this fall, and more the topics become more and more sophisticated. So from introductory ufology, ET 101, we will be moving to ufology 201, or conspiratorial ufology, this fall. I'll be very glad to see any one of you guys there. The mailer that I'm sending regularly every month has information also about the upcoming meeting. This month, only this month, it will be in Friday before the last Saturday of the month, because I'll be going to Phoenix next weekend.
Can you relate to the audience here, because not everybody has seen your pictures, how this ties to Operation Paperclip?
Yeah, with pleasure. This is the reason for this workshop and seminar tonight. The party line and the dissident line, these are just two small glimpses of the present-day reality. I would like for all of us here in the panel and the audience, through your questions, to try to approach, if possible, the bigger picture, the bigger conspiratorial picture of our planet and the local part of the galaxy, the local universe that we are in. Because this is what is important. This is what would help us explain why so many things are seemingly the same. Why the 5-point star is on the Russian flag, on the Chinese flag, on the American flag, on the Pentagon building and the American Capitol's floor plan. Or why the boys from Brazil are abducted at a young age and separated from their parents and educated devoid of any parental emotion and affection, turning them into obedient robotons serving the secret government. The Turkish Empire ruled my country for 5 centuries. The Turks were abducting children at age 3, 4, 5. This was called the blood tax. And they were taking them in their elite cavalry schools, the famous Yenichers, the crack Turkish battalions, using the same techniques. It's nothing new under the sun. The Russians were sending the street urchins into the Suvorov schools that were later turning them into the crack troops of the KGB and the military intelligence, the GRU. These are people that are killers. They have absolutely no emotions. In a Suvorov school where there would be killings and beatings and rapings and beautifully described by, actually the name is the same, namesake Viktor Suvorov in his books on the secret Russian military intelligence, the GRU. He has about a dozen books that have been very hush-hush, not advertised here in this country. Although he started publishing them in '84 when Dayton was still not strong. This is how kids were educated there. Why there's a photograph of a Hitlerjugend guy with a kerchief here and all the medals and epaulets and everything looked so familiar with a photograph of a Russian pioneer that is so familiar to a Boy Scout. Isn't there an invisible hand behind these events that is the reason for these similarities? Genetic experiments are a very important field of research. This is the toughest nut to crack for any scientific civilization. Transportation, as you see, has been solved long time ago through the anti-gravity source of travel. Any race, I mean, there are billions of races that use anti-gravity for propulsion. Communications have also been solved through the superluminal gravity wave communications that travel many times faster than the speed of light. According to Al here, the government has communications with the speed of light squared, cubed, on the 4th power, 5th, 6th, 7th power, which would give the government a no delay, real-time phone line as if we were talking with another district in Los Angeles, with any point in our galaxy. The light would take 150,000 years to cross the galaxy. No, just a second. I would like here to take some of the books. Wendell Stevens has done an incredible service to the world ufology by publishing this collection of about 20 books, brilliantly researched, contacted books of extraterrestrial races that are visiting our planet. Most of these races are mortals in the flesh, biological material bodies that reproduce sexually, most of them. Very few of these are spirit or come in, we can just put them here. Very few of them come in energy spirit bodies, which is the next level of evolution and advancement in the universe. Which means that although thousands of years ahead of us, still they are the same primary schoolers as we are in the universe. We cannot even imagine how much do we have to climb and learn in the universe till we go to university, to graduate school, to postdocs. So, as precious as all these revelations are, this is like talking to the privates of an extraterrestrial army. It would be more important to talk to the officer corps, if possible to the general staff, in order for one to understand the purpose of this whole hierarchical structure in the universe. I've seldom heard mentioned, I've never heard mentioned in American or world ufology, major revelatory sources of different nature. that are extremely important to understand how the universe works. It is not that a certain author is a giant, but simply that he was smart enough to climb on shoulders of giants. I mean, these are gigantic revelations that we have here. For example, one of them, the Billy Meyer stuff that I have here, a whole pile of 6,500 pages of contactee notes by Billy Meyer. And these are just 2,000 of them, a third of his contact notes. This is a brilliant revelation from a reincarnational race that believes in reincarnation. This is a revelation from Hochdeutsch German, poorly translated into English, and Wendell Stevens has polished up the first 4 volumes in the message from the Pleiades, part 1 and 2. As advanced as the Pleiadians are, they are still primary schoolers in the universe as we are. They are just in the 5th grade of the primary school. We're in the 2nd grade, a little bit ahead of us. This book here, the WASPI book, claims to be the revelation of the Jehovian universe, centered around the Earth, of numerous fine energy, higher vibrational planes of existence around the planet Earth. Basically, this is the spirit universe. All the tabloid paranormal stories of spirits visiting us, ghosts, possessions, evil spirits, satanic, demonic possessions, are explained in great detail. This is probably the best introduction into the spirit universe, and comes from a source many levels higher in evolution than these contactee books. Another interesting book that I've discovered by chance is the Urantia book, which itself claims to be the revelation to the planet by the Trinity universe, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. At the beginning, as a naive comparative revelatologist, I quickly realized that there are vast discrepancies in the views of the universe. And I started to thinking, well, Billy Meyer's lying. No, the Urantia book is not true. Or maybe these guys are wrong. And then little by little, and after many years of slowly laying the information down in the pickle, I realized that actually one doesn't have to discard things that don't match. You don't have to discard this or this or this fact, that simply little by little these partial revelations start to come together. And so you can match this and this in this way without discarding any one element. Then you can match these two from a different plan, then these two, and so on. I mean, there are hundreds of other revelations on the planet. There is no upper limit to the universe as we know it. As important as the Trinity universe is for our planet, I've been a little bit puzzled to realize that actually this may be the story of our local galactic cluster about a dozen galaxies. This is the domain of the Trinity hierarchy according to the Urantia book. I'm reading between the lines very hard because these are kind of the things that belong to the omitted things. If this is the case, then maybe in the universe as we know it, that consists of 150 billion galaxies that our primitive astronomy claims to have discovered, are many other hierarchies of the level of the Urantia hierarchy. Then Billy Meyer, through his contacts, the Pleiadians, through their tutors that come from a neighboring universe, they learned that actually our huge universe is just one egg in a bigger basket. Their tutors come from the next door neighbor egg, the Tau universe, the Timor rays from the Tau universe. And exactly where the two eggs touch, they can open a vortex hole and cross with their ship and come and visit us. Any other eggs? Yeah, they say 1 to the 49th power, 1 with 49 zeros of eggs in a bigger basket. So maybe in these, each one of these universes has its creator. These universes, according to some metaphysical sources, appear through budding out of the neighboring universe. A mother universe would create a daughter universe, and so on. I mean, the universe is immensely more complex than we can even imagine. We cannot even imagine how complex it is. That's why it's very funny and comical for me when someone in ufology starts claiming that I have discovered the ultimate truth. The 12th planet, the guys from that planet came to Earth, they genetically engineered us, they created Jesus, they created everything on the planet. By the way, the creation of Jesus is something that is a recurring story in many UFO contactee books. Obviously, the aliens have realized that this was an important character in our history. Maybe some of them were working as subcontractors in that whole event, as it usually happens in the universe. Celestial races, celestial beings, lower levels of celestial beings, then material extraterrestrial beings and so on work in these multiple pyramid hierarchical levels of contractors, some contractors and so on, until they come to the smaller planet. So in this bigger picture, I mean, I do believe that thousands of races visit our planet each year. Billy Meyer claims there are 3,000 races that visit us each year. Since the time of Jesus, there have been 6 million races to come to our planet. Any race that claims that they genetically engineered us, maybe they don't know our history too well. We've been engineered by dozens, if not thousands, of other races. That's probably how things work in the universe. And I'm about done. So, in this bigger picture, how would we tie up the genetic experiment, the underground facilities, and the secret government? One of the best renditions of a very major event that happened in our local universe I found for myself in the Urantia book. There are 3 papers on the Lucifer rebellion that happened 250,000 years ago, when a group of celestial beings decided to take a different philosopho-religious approach, decided to view the universe from a different perspective. The Lucifer Manifesto is published here. After reading several thousand pages of Billy Meyer's contactee, several hundred pages of his journals, and the detailed philosophical view that I have about the universe, I realized that despite the fact that they are tremendously morally and socially and ethically advanced, and that they would never give technology to us and to our government, first of all, the Pleiadians still have a philosophy that basically comes verbatim from the Luciferian Manifesto, philosophy-wise, that they view the universe in the same viewpoint as the group that took the side of Lucifer in that rebellion. I've noticed that anyone who starts talking about Lucifer is labeled a hardline religionist or a fundamentalist religionist, and is very easily discarded, simply because these levels of complexity that are at the level of these celestial hierarchies are way more higher than the levels of complexity of, let's say, this Ayarga race that travel in ships that are riveted together. They don't even have the hyperdrive, the superluminal warp speeds that even our government, secret government, has. So the Lucifer rebellion was an extremely important event on our planet, because this is the watershed point where the Trinity hierarchy and the Lucifer hierarchy have been ever since in a little arm wrestling, arm twisting, as to who would better rule our planet. On top of that, it turns out that we are not just any planet. The Urantia book claims that our planet Earth was the planet of the last and final, how should I call it, graduation thesis of the first party boss of the local universe, Michael of Nebadon. Nebadon is the name of the local universe according to the Urantia book. It has 10 million inhabited planets approximately, and it's ruled by Michael, Archangel Michael, for the guy that was Jesus Christ in his incarnation on the planet. Each of these first-party secretaries in each of these local universes, and there are 10,000 of them in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, they have to go through such 7 incarnations as teacher sons, paradise teacher sons, on planets, worlds of their choice, on any level of existence, material body, semi-material, spiritual body, and so on. And they have a list of the other incarnations that Christ went through. But the last and final incarnation happened to be on this planet. And after the 7th incarnation, it's very important for the local universe, because after the 7th incarnation, the local universe becomes autonomous and independent from Moscow. And the paradise proconsuls, imperial proconsuls, are downgraded to ambassadors. So basically, the local universe won its independence with the completion of the incarnation of the first party boss. So the planet where the local boss did his graduation thesis, obviously, is the most important planet in the local universe. If you can prove on this planet that you can do a better show than he does, then you have the whole local universe in your small pocket. So my feeling is that there has, ever since this Luciferian Liberian 250,000 years ago, there has been this arm twisting and tug of war between these celestial hierarchies as to who would create faster and a better way a more efficient society. And there have been a long list of skeletons in our history. Atlantis, Lemuria. Here there is another civilization, the continent of Pan, another civilization in the Pacific that may be even different from Lemuria. A long list of civilizations that were created primarily through contact with extraterrestrial races. The Pleiadians landed on the planet 180,000 years ago, 70,000 years after the Luciferian Liberian. Way more advanced than we are. Still, they share the philosophical outlook of the universe as our, Luciferian hierarchy. 90% of the UFOs visiting the Earth they do not believe in the Trinity. They share the view that the universe is a creation, that there is no universal father with a personality, a centralized being with intellect somewhere residing on the Isle of Paradise, as the Urantia book says, but that the universe is a clockwork, a black box clockwork with its laws, very complex laws, but it has no personality, ergo you cannot sit on a couch and crack jokes with the creation. Or you cannot use the creation as your teacher, which is very important. Only one of these contactee books, UFO the 4, is a race of supermaterial, half energy, half material bodies that believe in the Trinity. It's very interesting. My feeling is that maybe about 10% of the races on our planet believe in the Trinity. Another funny thing about the Trinitarian universe is that they do not have transportation through saucers. They do not have telepathic communications through superluminal frequencies. And in many ways, they are less advanced than the hardware developed by the Luciferian hierarchies on our planet. Transportation-wise and communication-wise, the Luciferian empire has outdone the Trinitarian one. However, the toughest nut to crack is the genetics. The toughest nut. The Pleiadians did genetic experiments 280,000 years ago. The very first volume of Billy Meyer Chronicles, they put this piece of information in the beginning because it's important. The very first volume of the Billy Meyer Chronicles talks about them mating against the will of the upper levels, of the upper floors, with the daughters of men. Later they couldn't withstand the next urge, the next scratch, and they started fusing humans with animals. Anything that walked probably was fused with the humans, thinking that they will create a better race. They ended up screwing the genetic code so much that they had to, a flood was engineered on the planet by high intelligences to wipe the blackboard clean and start anew, as were the floods that downed the continent of Pan, according to the revelation from the Jehovian universe, as was a flood that happened that ruined Atlantis, according to again, the Billy Meyer revelations. There have been many floods that ruined Atlantis. The last one was a war between the Earth, Mars, and the planet between Mars and Jupiter, Milona, Maldek, Milana, that was destroyed and gave the beginning of the asteroid belt, according to the Pleiadian revelation. So we see a long list of skeletons of dead civilizations, of unsuccessful attempts by the Luciferian hierarchy to outperform the Trinity into a faster moving new type of civilization. Another interesting comparison, I mean, the Pleiadians spent 120 million years hopping between stars, but they haven't had wars only for the last 50,000 years. Basically, it's a millisecond compared to the time they have spent flying between stars and feuding and waging wars and killing continents and planets and suns with whole solar systems, as was the Eye of God, the Lyra, the wars in the Lyra constellation more than 200,000 years ago that they had. So usually a planet that follows the Trinity prescription goes from the Adamic insemination, from the Adamic genetic upbringing, to the final stages when they are settled in light and life. This is probably an advanced civilization that's probably semi-material, semi-spiritual, in about 1 million years. The Pleiadians have been bar hopping, planet hopping for 120 million years, learning very little, simply because their philosophy is such. There is no universal father. The universe is a creation that has no personality, ergo it cannot teach you. And I mean, I'm not selling you for Soviet power and for joining the kolkhozes, as the joke in Russia says. I'm not selling you any philosophy. I'm just basically reiterating aloud this process of search that I've gone through, comparing these different revelatory sources and trying to figure out for myself which is a better and faster educational system that I would like to enroll my soul when I graduate from here.
Let me ask you a question. Getting into some hard evidence, we came across a picture of John Lyric giving me this.
Anthony, just a second. I'm about done. So basically, again and again and again, coming to genetics, this is the hardest nut to crack. The Pleiadians did it. Many of the other aliens that are revealed here did it. A lot of these civilizations had to be wiped out. The Germans did genetic experiments according to the story of a leading ufologist who did a major UFO documentary in the 70s. And he's trying to get this film released, a film about walking, breeding, living, hybrids between humans and animals that the Germans did in the concentration camps. If the Germans had these things 50 years ago, the Russians are doing genetic experiments in their Wrangel Island concentration camps above the North Arctic Circle. All these films that we see about crazy scientists in faraway places with shady financiers that are doing Frankensteinian stuff, this is not science fiction in my opinion. This is the signature of the Illuminati. This is how the Illuminati finance these secret projects. Now they have the underground labs, so they don't have to go all the way to Brazil to educate the kids. They just take them downstairs, underground, and do whatever they want. So basically this is about genetic engineering. I think this is the main avenue, the main direction of scientific research and development, trust, of effort of the Luciferian and the Illuminati secret government hierarchy on our planet. How do they finance these things? Pentagon money, maybe 10% of a $1 billion for a Trident submarine goes for the submarine. The rest is just siphoned off to other secret projects. I mean, these are bank accounts. Trident submarine, the B-1 bomber. If the Germans had these flying saucers 50 years ago, and the Americans and the Russians have had them, obviously all these military projects are just a welfare system for the military and for the thousands of engineers that create projects. I mean, remember this Golden Fleece Award about the toilet seat that was, how much, $500 or whatever? Maybe this is a toilet seat not for a bomber. I mean, it would be, some of them would be used for the bomber, but once developed, they would be used for flying saucers. I mean, the life support system of a nuclear submarine goes intact into a nuclear-driven saucer. The Rockefeller Foundation supposedly gave a present to the government, the nuclear-powered saucers that take part in the Star Trek scenario, the Star Trek exploration of our solar system and beyond. And as a token of gratitude, the moon base was given the name the Rockefeller base. The money comes from, I mean, all of these projects are bank accounts. The real hardware costs a lot less than the money that is paid for it. Number two, the black projects that, I mean, this is already money that only several people from Congress know exactly what it is spent on, but these are the small peanuts. The biggest money comes from, I mean, the drug money. This is a perfect way of getting a white powder that costs probably, normally, if the drugs are legalized, this powder should cost not much more than the common flour produced with the cheap labor of the third world. But artificially creating the necessary political situation, they probably got the idea from the dry period here, from the prohibition, that you can make tremendous amounts of fast money by prohibiting a given substance. But even this is not the chief source of money. Actually, if you calculate it on street values, a Trident submarine will be worth several 18-wheelers of cocaine. I mean, can you buy a Trident submarine with flour? You can't. Whoever invented the whole narcotics subculture was really a genius. I mean, this is a money-making machine. You plant some areas in the third world, use cheap labor, get some chemicals from here, and you end up with something that's worth as much as gold. Still, I think the biggest money comes from the printing press. The funny money. You turn that crank once, and from paper and ink that costs very little, you make gold. Because I've been trying to figure out for myself, how the hell do the Illuminati finance these projects? I mean, what our Bielek is talking about, the things that I have uncovered about secret space flights and so on, I mean, these are projects that literally cost thousands of billions of dollars, that cost thousands of, maybe trillions of dollars over the years. Obviously, most of the funding comes from the printing press. Germany was able in 7 short years to create miracles, to create full employment of everybody, because of a very simple reason. The printing press was removed from the hands of the bankers and given in the hands of the Nazi party, ergo the government. So all the proceeds from this creation of gold, from paper and ink, were plowed back into the economy and in the war industry and into highways and so on. So basically, these were my comments.
I like this work. It's very well, and very well. We covered it very nice. The family, the warrior, the phony, how sacrifice, human sacrifices started. Return. It covers the whole chapter on chemistry, the whole chapter on magnetics. And it belongs in there. The next one is that during the time man labored in Atlantis, there was a super civilization that is not talked about much in the Amazon region. Very superior. The other thing you can mention, Maladak or Murdoch, however it was also called Lucifer. There was a great war that went on between that planet and the Pleiades. They were experimenting with nuclear energy such as we haven't even dreamed of today. They were given the opportunity to stop this, while this would happen, or certain things would happen to them. They chose to go on. In the scripture it says, two shall be standing, one shall be sitting. It doesn't necessarily apply to Peter. My theory is it applied to the Maladex. They refused to obey what was said. So they were taken out. But first of all the good ones were removed. Those who wanted to play their silly games as we have today, they left them. So what did they do? They annihilated themselves. This will never be allowed to happen again. Asteroid belt, which caused the moons to put around Mars, it will never happen again. They made a mistake. And I'm sure you know about this. With the Pleiades race of people, which is said to be mainly made up of women, they didn't think this would happen. And anytime you set off an atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, I don't care what it is, it not only affects us, but it affects other dimensions, other entities that we know nothing about that coexist with us, that are able, and possibly certain members of that, those energy fields can actually come into our dimension and run us the way they want. So we may think we've got control of everything, but no. And it has been said that some of these entities live off of the dead and around reservoirs. And I just wanted to bring that up.
We can barely scratch not 1%, but a millionth of a percent here. There are so many brilliant books and revelations. Nobody can read them all. The truth is everywhere, in every language, in every culture, one would find revelations from different sources that would basically give a full set of the picture of the world around us. Search and you shall find. It's out there in every culture and every language. I remember Al talking about how much the military controls the nuclear weapons and how much do they understand from the nukes. And probably it's a nice time to give a little outline here of what happened with the hydrogen bombs exploding.
Yes, that little bit. Yep. As you may know, the history of the development of the atomic weapons began in the United States in 1943 at Los Alamos and went through, of course, the development of the atomic bomb, and later on Dr. Teller developed the hydrogen bomb. The first hydrogen bomb was tested in 1952 in Eniwetok. There was a second test in 1954. The 54 test, as I remember, was one in which they instrumented very carefully and very thoroughly the device put on an island, and they ran 3-mile-long tunnels with instrumentation in order to photograph at the end with some very exotic timing techniques and control mechanisms, all built by EG&G, because EG&G from the beginning and to this day is the only contractor to the AEC or NRC for instrumentation of any type of atomic weaponry or atomic developments, or for that matter, certain other areas. So they had the test at time 0, T equals 0. They, of course, push the button. The first device that goes off, of course, is the atomic trigger mechanism, which then triggers the hydrogen bomb, which is a hydrogen mechanism which has to be triggered by exceedingly high temperatures, about 100 million degrees Fahrenheit. They wanted to measure the propagation rate of that explosion down the tunnel. They weren't able to, because T equals 0, they found, was everywhere, as there was no propagation rate. It was instantaneous to the end of the tunnels. They vaporized, and suddenly the hydrogen wore actual mushroom cloud, if you will, of the hydrogen bomb was instantaneously full-blown and remained there for a period of time. And as it started to dissipate, Life magazine got a hold of some of the photographs which the military AEC had made, and they showed that they were looking into another universe. You could see stars through those photos, and this was published openly by Life magazine in those days. Needless to say, Life magazine had their wrists slapped rather hard, because nobody figured out quite how they got a hold of the photographs. But they... I'm sorry? Back in 1954, I do not remember the specific issue. I do not have a copy of that in my files. I wish I had. But they found that the physicists didn't really understand the nature of time. They didn't understand the nature of what they were dealing with. That time is not an absolute function. It is compressible. The Russians in the 60s did their own experiments to find that time as an average value, which we measure with a clock, but it is definitely alterable from t equals 0 in terms of time flow slows down to virtual 0, or it can become infinity, which is to say that there is no propagation time from point A to point B of what we call the measurement, i.e. the speed of light propagation. The propagation rate of the speed of light is not a constant. Einstein never said it was, and there's been many experiments done since to show that it is a variable. It is only an apparent constant on planet Earth under normal measurements and conditions of measurement. So we have here a conundrum, a problem. How come the hydrogen bomb explosion expanded instantaneously? We still don't know that answer. I don't think the physicists know that answer to this day. It's very much like what happened with the Philadelphia Experiment locking up at the Phoenix Project. They still don't really know what happened in terms of the problems generated when they ripped this hole in space-time 40 years wide and created another problem because they knew, at least von Neumann knew, and a few people knew, that time is not the evasive little something, a wiggle in the ether. It is a wave, and it also has both a forward and reverse function. And because of the abruptness of this tearing of the fabric of space-time, a reverse time wave was created, which, if it had intersected the forward time wave in the year 1963, would have resulted in the disruption of the entire North American continent, vast amounts of matter being spewed out into space, and the entire North American continent, other than the mountain ranges, would have been underwater in 1963. And we would have been back in the equivalent of the Ice Age in terms of civilization, the Stone Age at best. This was prevented. I do not go into this normally in my lectures on the Philadelphia Experiment because it's a long, drawn-out story. But von Neumann was warned that there was a problem. He realized it, and he went traveling around through time. He had his own time machine. He found other people and recruits, two scientists out of the future from beyond the year 2003, as well as another man in the future from 1963, had the full cooperation of President Reagan. The matter of time becomes a total illusion in terms of the way he was moving around and bringing people and hardware together to provide a damper in the year 1963 to prevent the reverse time wave from being of any consequence. We're here talking about it. Obviously, the project was successful, and the project was disbanded immediately after the need for it was over. This is just one small aspect. I know all of the people involved that were involved in this whole thing, and I've had some private conversations which I am not at liberty to disclose, but the gist of it goes that the people then, even von Neumann himself, did not fully understand the problem. One of his staff physicists understood it better than he did, and the people out of the future understood it. They were dealing with the problems of holonomic topologies, if I may use that terminology, which says that if you poke a hole in space-time here, you don't know where else in the universe you're going to poke another hole in space-time and disrupt another universe, and that's exactly what they were doing. Those who were from the future stated that the mess they created was perhaps the worst in the history of the universe in terms of disruption. There was a project, or a lockup, two projects, which created a problem, the like of which has never been seen before and hopefully will never be seen again. But this is only one aspect of the problems involved with physics, with atomic weaponry, and of course with playing around with time. This issue of time was a side issue in terms of the hydrogen bomb. It was a main issue in terms of the Philadelphia Phoenix projects. Yes, you have a question. There was a movie entitled The Final Countdown that dealt with the carrier Nimitz and a fictionalized but actually more real than fiction plot involving going backwards in time and attempting to change history. Now, as a matter of fact, all of the hardware involved in the Philadelphia Experiment, while abandoned in 43, was resurrected in 47. The problems were found, the answers were found, and the whole system was made operational without the side effects in 1953. And of course, after several generations and changes and improvements in hardware, these systems were installed on all of the super carriers, the Nimitz being the first. And it was not only the capability for invisibility, it was also the capability for traveling in time. To the best of my knowledge, the Nimitz was actually involved in the true experiment of going backwards in time, and they were attempting to change history. The orders to the captain were to go back to the day before Pearl Harbor, destroy the Japanese fleet and the air fleet, and prevent Pearl Harbor from happening. Well, they had the capability of doing it, I'm sure, because with the weaponry we had, let's say, in the early 80s, we could have wiped out half of the Japanese fleet in a twinkling of an eye, and certainly all the aircraft they had in the air. But the problem was this: if you were to do this and alter history that radically, what happens to future generations? What happens to the real history? In the movie, there was a civilian observer who was along, argued with the captain, and says quite literally, do you want to play God and take responsibility for future generations? Well, before he had the opportunity to say yes or no, in the movie, of course, the natural phenomena caught up with the fleet of aircraft already launched, and they all had to be pulled back to the carrier. And, of course, they returned to the current history time in terms of the movie. In reality, so far as I understand, he chickened out and refused to launch the waves of aircraft to destroy the Japanese fleet and the Japanese aircraft, and allowed history to take its normal course, return to the present time, or the present time from which he had then emerged, and took whatever beating he took from the Navy brass for refusing to carry out a project. Now, we cannot prove that that is what actually happened, but we have reason to believe that is what happened, because we know they have this kind of hardware today. I have a friend who I've lost contact with, but who was on the Nimitz and found the hardware and was given a threat: either you join us and become part of this project, or it's deep six for you. He later found his way off the carrier by feigning insanity, threatening the life of the captain, of course, and all of this. So they gave him a Section 8. First thing to do, of course, was not the Section 8 dismissal, but they quickly got a helicopter on board that carrier, took him to the Naval Hospital in San Diego, allowed him to recover, and he slowly recovered. Of course, he wasn't mentally ill at all. This was a complete feigning of the whole situation in order to get himself out of the Navy, and it was successful. Instead of getting a Section 8 discharge, the captain tore up the papers and says, you're coming out with an honorable discharge. Now, you might ask why. It's a very simple answer. If he had had a Section 8 discharge, he could go to a congressman and a senator and says, look, this is what happened, and I'll tell you why. If he then went with an honorable discharge to a senator or a representative and tried to tell the story, they'd laugh at him. The captain knew what he was doing. As far as I know, they actually did do this, and they do have the capability of becoming invisible and perhaps traveling in time, but this, of course, requires heavy hardware, and only the supercarriers have enough power capability with the nuclear generators they have on board to do this. Well, as Vladimir was suggesting, getting back to the nuclear weapon problems, we do have some aspects here which are unsolved and unresolved, and it's quite possible that one of the problems involved with the hydrogen bomb and related weapons of that caliber is that every test that has been conducted, too, by the United States, they said they would never do another one again because of the consequences of the 54 test. They had a 6 one scheduled, and it was abandoned. The Russians had one nuclear test with a hydrogen bomb. That yielded an energy output far in excess of what was planned, and it caused even then the chairman, Mr. Khrushchev, to panic, because the yield was in excess of 100 megatons, and they planned for 30. The Chinese have had one hydrogen bomb test, and I don't know whether they plan anymore. I believe the French have had one, and they've all said they will never, essentially, never more. The forces are released are so enormous that they don't really understand them, and they don't understand fully how to control it. A very well-known nuclear physicist by the name of Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, who has been routed out of the establishment because she spoke openly at UC Berkeley about things like remote viewing being carried on at SRI and her ideas about nuclear energy. She has 125 papers published in the field of nuclear energy, the first one at the age of 16. And she has said very bluntly, and looking at it in terms of mathematics, she's writing her own mathematics now. She says they don't know what the blazes they're doing with the nuclear energies, and the nuclear scientists have not the foggiest notion of what's going on. And that's a nuclear physicist saying this. So we have problems here, and I think you will find, among other things, the trend now towards abandonment of nuclear weapons is for many reasons. One, they don't really know how to control them. Secondly, the waste problem is enormous because these weapons have to have the warheads replaced every 10 years because they go soft and go sour and cannot be used. And of course, this material can be recycled. It is in Europe, it is not in the U.S. They create an enormous waste problem. 90% of the waste is military, not from the nuclear power plants. And that waste problem is now overwhelming us, and everybody knows it. And the Russians have their problems. They had one nuclear waste site blow up in 1947 that devastated an area of 100,000 square miles, wiped out a city. And after 20 years, the vegetation is starting to grow back, and some areas are still so hot they won't let anybody in them 20 years later.
I would like here to make a little summary. I've heard not only from Al, but from other people the phrase that the scientists don't know what they're doing, especially with nuclear weapons, with other advanced weaponry. That Russian hydrogen bomb that caused a major earthquake and bent the needles of the seismographs almost the world over. There was danger of the first hydrogen bomb setting the seawater on fire and basically exploding the planet. According to some alien revelations, this planet has been several times on the verge of being exploded by these runaway nuclear explosions. They say they test nuclear weapons underground in the Nevada test range. God knows what they're testing. They are long beyond 5th, 6th, 10th generation of nuclear weapons. They test such bizarre explosive technologies there. Not only nuclear explosions, but all these experiments with time, poking holes in the time just for the fun to see how the universe works. Manipulation of the weather. I mean, this is a whole different line of research. Weather manipulation through the Reichian technology for warfare. Earthquake manipulation. I mean, all these are technologies that the government, the Russians and the Americans have for, if not half a century, then for 30, for 40 years. The Russians can cause an earthquake as it is. It's a dial a quake. You just dial on the computer the magnitude and the epicenter of the quake, and you press the button, and the Tesla howitzer sends a hyperspace wave that condenses and solidifies and creates an explosion at any point of the globe you want. But let's try to come back to the topic of our discussion today. I mean, not only the party line versus the government line, but let's see the Luciferian line versus the Trinitarian line on this planet. I have a feeling, I mean, in analogy to the American drug companies testing dangerous and unproven drugs into the third world countries. In a similar way, many alien races are trying out their dangerous technologies on our planet. I mean, they are smart cookies. They are not dumb enough to try this time rippling Philadelphia stuff on their planet. Not only that, but above the material aliens, then we have the super material celestial beings with their hierarchy. What would the Luciferian hierarchy profit from all these endless experiments? Well, Lucifer is in the business of outperforming the Creator. With all these, I mean, on and on, one would hear that few of the engineers, few of the scientists, few of the military really know what the project is about. Usually, we would be given a project, but there are 2 or 3 other secret projects piggyback on top of the civilian or innocent-looking, even a secret project. Many times the Luciferian empire would be trying to understand major riddles, major secrets of the universe, in order for them later on to poke their spokes into the wheels of the Trinitarian cart, in order to be better able to manipulate the universe of space and time around them. There is a very interesting photograph here that is a material proof of an alien civilization, of an ancient terrestrial civilization that was way more advanced than we are today. And here Anthony would explain how he found this photograph.
This thing came to me courtesy of John Lear. I was up at his place in Las Vegas, and he showed me this huge metal piece that came up, as I understood it, out of the ground. The DOE goes over the country, and it's right in the center here. This is some 60 feet high and about 45 feet across, and it has what Vladimir calls as some sort of coolers. And the DOE and their planes discovered this huge magnetic field underneath them, and they went to investigate. This is either in, I think it's in northern Utah or southern Idaho, and they sent a drill down, and the drill broke when it hit this huge hunk of metal. They sent down a diamond drill, and the diamond drill broke. They dug a hole, and there were 6 of these things down there. They brought up 2. You can barely see a crane over here at the side. And it's, you know, an enormous, one of these enormous cranes. They have 2 girders strapped to it, and it's resting on a large chunk of sand there to hold, and it's got steel cables holding the thing up, and I found it absolutely fascinating, and I don't know how many thousands of years it's been down there, but Vladimir, I wanted Vladimir to explain specifically what it is, and after the lecture you can come up and take a look at it.
I saw this photograph from much larger, they were about half this page in size. And I spent about an hour very carefully looking. There were 3 photographs from different angles. My feeling, I mean, these are 3 stories tall. This is a one-piece equipment. I measured the height. It's about 3 stories tall because a human being is as tall as about, anyway, but still it's a monstrous piece of equipment. But the very nature of it, it looks like an advanced tokamak type magnetic confinement device that would be used for advanced nuclear fusion experiments. It is made of 2 electric magnets, basically a donut electric magnet is folded in half, and then you have a horseshoe. Then you have 2 of these identical horseshoes joined like this, and with several supports here to keep them in place. So you end up with a very good magnetic confinement bottle for advanced plasma fusion or God knows what other experiments. This comes from underground. It has been underground for nobody knows how many years. This is definitely a remnant from a very advanced past civilization. And there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of other remnants by past civilizations unearthed by the government that they would never reveal to us.
That brings the diamond drill does not mean tooling. It's a device that's based on something that we can have that. And it's not even working with a filter magnet. Way beyond that level when the access to utilization is something way beyond that. I can see it up all the time.
A few years ago, close to a nuclear power station, they were drilling for a nuclear waste disposal site when the drill struck the thing. A few years ago, I mean, it's a very fresh photograph. I would like to give the word to Jordan here again, to have his side of the overall picture, he's been concentrating his research efforts on the Luciferian presence in form, in symbols, and in reality on the planet.
Yes, thank you. I have quite a few things that have come to my mind in the last few minutes that I'd like to talk about. One, I think I want to ramble on for a few moments about some interesting things that I find fascinating. One is that in all military, as far back as the World War I, they were making motion pictures of war. They had old cameras over there, and you can still get those films from, from the local tape stores of old World War I footage. In World War II, they had plenty of films of everything going on in the war, and then Vietnam, and my God, they got films of everything going, all the wars all over the world, and got all the tapes of it today, except in Grenada. In Grenada, there was not even allowed a Brownie camera. Nothing was allowed to be photographed on the island of Grenada under orders of the President, Ronald Reagan. You better find out why, because something was going on that island of Grenada that the military and the President did not want any pictures taken of. Something, I think, and in my opinion, I think some very powerful experiments were going on that island, and that there was a university. We're told that there was a university there composed of the British, the German, the Swiss, and the Americans, and they had a university there with 600 students and 602 instructors. They had 2 more instructors than they did students. Something was going on that island, and we're not being told what it was, but the military was sent in, surrounded it, and they burned down that building that the university was in. What now? I have no idea. Oh. Huh?
Another war.
Yeah, the Grenada War.
When we went in there and
Yeah, right. Yeah.
let me shed some light on it.
Yeah. And make it quick, because I got a lot of things I want to...
In my videotape, we went into this. We never saw it. We went in there, all of a sudden, they wrote the 10 medical suits. Now, why would we do that? Well,
Right.
it's called the tectonic plate. Whoever has possession of these certain places going on.
When we were talking about kids disappearing, there were a lot of black kids being snatched off the street in Atlanta for a while back. They began to find out that interferon is developed out of blood from young black boys. They get the best interferon from young black boys. The mere fact that those kids are being snatched in Atlanta, which is the home of the disease control, not disease eradication, disease control, makes me wonder if those kids were not being snatched and taken to that center for disease control, because they are developing some AIDS, they're developing all of these biological weapons, which they have to. Not only that, but I have a friend who was the head of security at Caltech, and I went out to visit him one night late at Caltech, and we were making the rounds, and I'm walking around with him, and he showed me a building out there that has no windows and no doors. And I asked him what was in that building, and he said, "You don't want to know." They told me that I don't want to know. And he said, "You can't get to it. You can only go through another building, go down the elevator, and you have to go through all these different locks and channels, go under the ground and come up in that building." He says, "People that do know what's in there will not talk about it, but whatever it is, it's pretty serious." So I think that they're doing some really heavy-duty experiments on human beings, and it's going to make Auschwitz and Dachau look like child's play when we find out what this country's really into.
What number of building is that?
I have no idea, but I'll give you the man's name.
More approximate.
It was about 3, I think, I would guess.
How long?
I'm not even sure. Probably about, it's like about the size of a house, a little bit larger, a good-sized house, 3 stories high. But just to give you an idea of the kind of thing I believe is going on in this country, I think that there are some experiments going on, and that we've already established that many of the top Nazis were brought here after the war, and that's obvious. Then, of course, there's I wanted to bring out something too about Pine Gap. I don't know if anyone's ever heard about Pine Gap, Australia. And of course, there's a lot of things going on there too. And has anyone here ever heard about the woodpecker effect, Steve? Okay. So I'm not going to go into those things, but they are interesting to show that there's a lot of high technology going on. Yes.
I guess that CIA based out by Ayers Rock.
Yeah, it's in Australia, in the outback. Yeah, right. And there's more CIA agents there than anywhere else in the except Langley, Virginia. I want to get into the Illuminati because it's a subject that's held my attention for many years. I started off with just looking at the Illuminati. Later on, I began to find out that there is a bigger picture to be understood. On the back of a $1 bill, most of us don't even have that anymore, but on the back of a $1 bill, you'll find the symbols of some very powerful secret societies that have been in existence in this country and in Europe. I want to go to the left-hand side first. On the back of the dollar bill, you'll find the Egyptian pyramid. Now, you have to find out why it is that we have an Egyptian pyramid on an American dollar bill. To the secret societies throughout the world, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Thule Society, all of these ancient secret societies all say that America is the new Egypt. It's the new Egypt. And it's based on Egyptian magic and Egyptian Kabbalistic philosophy. So if you understand that what we're talking about, America being the new Egypt, now all the symbols start falling into place. This has to do with George Bush's New World Order, and I want to get into that too, because I want to explain for the first time something to explain what this New World Order really means. At the top of the pyramid, you'll see Annuit Coeptus. Annuit Coeptus in Latin means our enterprise is now a success, or our enterprise or our project has been crowned with success. On the bottom, the enterprise is then stated. On the bottom, you'll see the banner singing Novas Ordo Seclorium. The novas is, of course, in Latin for new, novice. Ordo is order. And seclorium is a secular, anything which is secular is worldly, new order of the world. So when you hear George Bush talking about the New World Order, he's not talking about something new or some nebulous political plan that they would like to install. He's talking about something as old as Adolf Hitler. He's talking about something that goes all the way back into Bavaria, Germany. He's talking about a very powerful plan that was laid out a long time ago. This man is a very evil man. Plato said that the price good people pay for the non-involvement in public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. We in this country are being ruled by the most evil men, I believe, that's ever existed on the face of the earth. They are not human. They are bloodthirsty. They have one thing in mind, total world domination. It is the survival of the fittest, and they're fighting on a very large scale some very important things which are going on, and I don't believe they're even similar to human. I think that what is happening here is we have some people that are bloodthirsty, and we're talking about people who are ordinarily, to the eye, very gentlemanly, very important-looking people. No way. These are very, very, very evil people. On the other side, and I'm going to get into this New World Order thing for a moment too, but I want to bring out the pyramid itself has 13 layers. The 13 layers coincide with the 13 stars on the presidential seal. 13 stars. There are 13 strips in the shield. There are 13 leaves in the talons of the eagle. Then there's 13 berries in the leaves. There are 13 arrows. Everything's done in sequence of 13. Even Annuit Coeptus is 13 letters. Everything's done in relation to 13 because of Jesus and the 12. Jesus and his 12 make 13, and this is ostensibly the reason why they would use the 13. It goes back even to a more ancient time, into the most ancient world, where 13 was a very important number to the occult world. 13 actually comes from the ancient Sumerians, the earliest dynasties of Egypt, saying that the sun, that thing that comes up in the morning, was the sun with his 12 helpers, and the 12 helpers were the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year. So therefore the sun with his 12 makes 13, and that was the Sumerian, Egyptian, Babylonian, and Phoenician, etc. It was accepted by all of the ancients that there were 12 divisions of a year, and the sun was its dominating force. On the top of the pyramid, you'll see the all-seeing eye with the light emanating from around it. Interesting that Jesus is referred to twice in the New Testament, and the Messiah is spoken of 3 times in the Old Testament with the word. Jesus in the New Testament is referred to as the chief cornerstone the builders rejected. There are 2 different words here used. The apostles were called cornerstones. There were 12 cornerstones, and Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone. The Greek word for chief cornerstone is a pyramidon, a pyramid on top of a pyramid, or in the triangle. So this is what is being presented here, supposedly, is Jesus and his 12 of the 13. What I'm saying here is that these master conspirators are using the foundations of Christianity to justify their imperialistic goals and their imperialistic aims. And you'll see that when you understand that the old world, and now we get into the old world and the new world order. Europe was called the old world. And if you understand that Rome dominated the old world for 2,000 years in what they called the Piscean Age, and that's why the rulers ruled Rome during the Piscean Age. Well, if you understand that Rome dominated Europe and Europe dominated the world, but what you don't understand is that behind Rome was a secret society of what we might call a fraternal order of mystics, or Freemasonry is what we have today. There's something similar. And behind the Roman legions and behind the Roman government was a secret society of fraternal order, and they were referred to in the dictionary. We can even see in the dictionary the word order means a fraternal order, like an order of priesthood or whatever. So behind the Roman Empire was a order, a fraternal order that ran things, and Caesar was merely the front man. Like today, the President of the United States is as powerless as I am. He is merely a front man for people to throw sticks at. The real powers of the people you will never see. They call the shots, and you'll never know who they are. And if things get too hot, they can always shoot the guy out in the office and put another one in. But the point I'm making is that in Europe, for 2,000 years, being ruled under Rome, and Rome dominating Europe and Europe dominating the world was dominated by what is called the Old World, because Europe was the Old World. And today America is referred to as the New World. Columbus discovers the New World. So what we're hearing now is New World Order. It is a fraternal order that is behind the American government. That is the New World Order. And this New World Order is based on the Old World Order, but there is a war going on between the Old Order of Europe and the New Order of America as to who is going to finally come out and dominate the world. And that's why we've had 2 world wars. Now, when you understand that Adolf Hitler's closest confidant was Mussolini and the Catholic Church, and we know that now from history, that when the Jews were being persecuted and killed, the Pope happened to be out of town, didn't know anything about it, never raised a voice, never said anything, because you have to understand that the New World Order, America, has nothing more than Kabbalistic symbols, Judaic Kabbalistic symbols, and the order in America is in fact a Kabbalistic an order which is referred to as the Knights Templars, the Knights of the Temple, the Knights Templars. The Knights Templars are the real brains and the power behind America. Back in the year 1013, the Pope ordered the French king, Philippe le Bel, to arrest all of the Knights Templars, which were Semitic, Hebrew, Freemasonic order. And they were gathered together in Europe with the idea to reestablish their power in Jerusalem and rebuild the Temple of Solomon. Solomon's temple. And that's why today we're hearing that in Israel there is the hope that they will be able to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, because that's Freemasonry. That has to do with the Order of Knights Templars. That has to do with the powers behind America. And that's why if you go to a dictionary, an encyclopedia, and look up the word British Israel, you will see that there is a fraternal order called the Anglo-Israel Freemasonry, or British Israel. It's the power behind England and America. Now, when you understand that the Pope has never been to England, is not there now, and is never going to go to England. He can go to all the black countries, he can go to all the poor countries of Asia, but he will never go to England, never has and never will, because there is a very big war going on between some very powerful fraternal orders. England and America are allies, have always been and still are. They're joined together, incidentally, through something called International Maritime Admiralty Law, which is world law. And so when we boil all of this down, what we're basically talking about is an old world order under the old Roman Empire, which dominated the world, as opposed to a new world order and a new empire being built in America. And that's why Steven Spielberg and George Lucas get their Star Wars and the Empire Strikes Back. And of course, according to the old ancients, that the Knights Templars, their mystical leader was called a Jedi Knight. He was a Knight of the Jedi clan. He was a little guy with the pointed ears. And when you understand that it's the return of the Jedi, what we're talking about here is some very mystical stuff, and it's entertaining on an entertainment level. But these people in America who are putting these stories together and who are running our country know very well what they're doing. They realize that there was a very powerful war between, like, similar to the mafia families, warring for power groups, warring for territory. And so what we have now is we have two large fraternal orders in the world, and even in the last movie for The Godfather, Godfather 3, talks about the Propaganda Due, or P2 Lodge of Freemasonry. The Pope before this one was assassinated by the Propaganda Due Lodge of Freemasonry. I could rattle on like this all night long because I have so many things I'd like to talk about. But the point I want to bring out is that America is the new world order, and it has in mind the old ancient plan of the Knights Templars, of the Knights of the Temple. Yes. Founded. It was founded by some very powerful Freemasons and Rosicrucians. It was not just by chance a group of men that wanted freedom. No such a thing exists. Those men were very powerful, intellectual, spiritualistic people. They knew what they were doing. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were two of the most diabolical and fascinating people in that original Continental Congress. They were making trips to France and to Sion, France, which is where we get today Zionism. Zionism comes from Sionism, from the Peoria de Sion Masonic Lodge, which was setting up a new order of the world in which they call themselves back then, and monies and divine direction, or at least the help was coming from France and revolutionary radical societies. And there's a great book on this subject called Fire in the Minds of Men by James Billington. This is interesting because James Billington is one of their boys, one of the highest ranking historians today, and he was the head of the Rhodes Scholarship. And so he wrote a book, a thick book called Fire in the Minds of Men, in which he outlined this whole thing. He talks about the Illuminati and the Freemasons and how they set up America, and it's interesting too. This brings up another point. How many of you are aware that there is at least 3 separate and different citizenships in this country? There's 3 of them. There are 3 different citizenships in this country. There is you can be a citizen of the United States, or you're a citizen of the United States of America, which is different. Or you're a sovereign citizen of a sovereign state. And being a sovereign, you become a king in your own house. You become a king in your own state. We see that out working in the old Wild West days when the guy would wear his gun, and if he had a falling out with somebody else in the bar, they'd go out in the street and shoot it out. Why? Because each one of those was, in fact, according to international maritime admiralty law on which this country was founded, each individual was a sovereign. And you have just, as a sovereign, declared war on another sovereign nation. That guy right over there with the gun. And you go out and you end it in a war in the street. So we were able to be sovereigns. We were kings on our own land. We had the same power that the King of England had. And, of course, that's been taken away from us now because we don't read, we don't think, we don't question anything. We like to go along to get along. We have plenty of bars and plenty of alcohol and entertainment, drugs, and whatever else you need. Now, you don't have to worry about drugs because they'll be brought to your door. So this government makes sure that we have plenty of entertainment, plenty of bread and circuses like Caesar did, but there's something very serious going on. And when we talk about the UFO thing and that whole subject, I'm not very well read on the whole subject of UFOs, but there's two things I do know: that the phenomena itself is legitimate. There's something going on. Now, as to what it is, I have no idea. But there's something going on. And the second thing is that I believe there's something even bigger behind all of this that's yet to come out. I just feel it, that there's something going on here that our government has not told us, and they're using a lot of disinformation to keep us occupied and keep everyone fighting each other. But I think there's something very big going on here.
Gordon,
Yes.
let me bring up, if I may,
A question with regards to Arthur C. Clarke's 2010, his last chapter, Lucifer Rising. We know that the Galileo mission left here with 49.25 pounds of plutonium. To the best of my knowledge, the atmosphere of Jupiter is ignitable. In 2010, he starts off on page 283. He says, 50 times more brilliant than the full moon, Lucifer had transformed the skies of Earth, virtually banishing night for months at a time. Despite the sinister connotations, the name was inevitable, and indeed, light bringer had brought evil as well as good. Only the centuries and the millennia would show in which direction the balance tilted. Now, Bush is talking about 1,000 points of light. I believe he's talking about a millennium of Lucifer, and we are yes, and the German Reich, the 1,000-year Reich, and the New World Order of Adolf Hitler, and the New World Order of George Bush. We know that George Bush is the son of Senator Prescott Bush, who was head of Brown Brothers Harriman, who were heavily into the financing of Adolf Hitler. And we see all of this coming together. And then in his book, and it starts off in this particular chapter talking about Lucifer, and then he gets into at the last of the book, he talks, and this is he's writing from Colombo, Sri Lanka here. He said, this quite brilliant concept has been taken seriously by a number of astronomers, notably NASA's Institute of Space Studies, Dr. Robert Jastrow, and may provide one of the best motives for the projected Galileo mission. So the 2010 book was written prior to the launching of the Galileo mission on October 19th, 1989. It will reach the planet Jupiter by 1995. It's supposed to circle there for 4.5 years and then go into the planet, and I believe to ignite the planet so that we will have a binary star system. And as Arthur C. Clarke is talking about, the renaming of it Lucifer, and I've just finished an article, and I think that we've talked about this before, called Lucifer 2000, The Coming October Surprise, which ties into the current Life magazine last chapter by Arthur C. Clarke. So could you illuminate us a little bit further on that?
Well, I think you pretty well covered that subject. I think it's interesting that there's a lot of scientific work going on right now that they're giving us stories and cover stories about the Star Wars thing. But I'm wondering what the real story behind the Star Wars project is, and I'm sure that there's something more to be coming out on that subject. In relation to what I was going to bring out about, I had this one point to bring out about. And I'm not evading your question. I'm just not that knowledgeable on it. And I think that you made good points, but I'm not too sure about what I might be able to add. But the point I wanted to make is in relation to Adolf Hitler. If you remember that Adolf Hitler came into power about 1933, Germany was starving. The whole nation had been totally destroyed during economically and militarily. With the First World War, so bad that Germans who don't ever give up in a war, they gave up, and they never do that. But they had to do that under Kaiser and had to sue for peace. And Germany was totally destroyed and eating out of trash cans. A few years later, Adolf Hitler comes onto the scene, and they're so bad off that they were listening to anybody. And once he became noted in Germany, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he started getting money to buy ships and planes and building military, until finally, a few years later, he becomes, or his Germany becomes the most powerful military machine on the face of the earth. No one has bothered to ask themselves, where the hell did they get the money? Because the country was starving. So then when you understand that the United States and Europe, European bankers and the United States bankers are the ones that put up the money for Adolf Hitler. And the reason for Adolf Hitler, Hitler was supposed to do one thing. He thought he was supposed to do two. He was only supposed to do one thing, and that is destabilize the old banking families of Europe by causing havoc in their backyard, causing all kinds of war and depleting their resources and depleting their banks for this war. And that was what America had in mind for Hitler to do, is to deplete the old banking families and to wear them down to prepare Europe and the rest of the world for America to come in as a new world order. But Hitler also wanted to carry it on a little bit further and let himself become head of the new world order. He didn't realize that he was only a destroyer. He was the old Saturnalian destroyer. And the old Capricornian, Saturnalian, Germanic scheme of things, he was the destroyer. He wasn't the builder of a new order. The builders were in America. Interesting, there was a movie written by H.G. Wells and made into a movie back in 1939 called Things to Come. And in that movie, Things to Come, Michael Rainey comes after a great war in Europe, which has encompassed the world, and he comes back and he says, we are the Masonic builders of the New World Order. And I said, I'll bet. And if you get this tape, you can rent it. All of the words, all the catchphrases are there. All the terminology is there. If you understand that the old ancient magicians in England, the old Celtic magicians, would wave their magic wand to deceive you and work magic on you. Those old magic wands are made of holly wood. And if you understand that that's exactly what is being done today, we are being mesmerized and manipulated, exploited, used by Hollywood, drugs, alcohol, and every other kind of entertainment because somebody is preparing us for a new world order, and the best way to rape someone is dope them up, confuse their minds, get them on alcohol or dope or something and keep them confused, and then your victim cannot fight you back. And that's what's going on in America today. They're breaking us down, they're demoralizing us, they're putting us into dopers and stupors and keeping us at each other's throat because they're planning something big for us. And the big come down is getting ready to come down. And one other thing, when that come down does happen, and it's going to happen very soon, we're going to find out that white is not a color. White is an attitude, and you can't have the attitude if you don't have megabucks. And this come down that's going to happen very soon, we're all going to be slaves, because to those handful of men at the top of this world, they look at human beings as nothing more than nothing more than just animals. And so we're all in for this. And like I heard one man say, if we don't stick together and hang together, we're going to hang separately. I think it is now time to take this message of intellectual, opening your mind, do some research on your own, and I've got plenty of material I'll share with anybody that wants it. There is something going on in America. It is not the land of the free and the home of the brave, with liberty adjusted for all. It is something much, much bigger. It is a very powerful plan for a new order, and it is well on its way, and it's not going to be very nice when it gets here. Yes?
Two questions. What do you spoke about?
Well, that's one of about 17 volumes. Right. That's just one of them.
Getting back to the 3 kinds of citizenship.
But I've got, most of what I do is government documents, USIA documents, DIA documents, and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of other people who, who have written about it. Yeah, right. Right.
Then you have your citizen principles of your sovereign state citizens.
Right.
Then you mentioned USA citizenship. I'm not familiar with.
Yes, the United States of America. I'm not really extremely familiar with all of this because it's not my field, but it's enough of my field that I have familiarized myself with the 3 basics. The United States is only Washington, is only D.C. and certain islands which are designated to be states. Right, protected. And so, and then of course the United States of America, and that's why we have zip codes on our mail. The zip codes on the mail are not to direct the mail. The zip codes are showing if you use a zip code, and if you use it, you don't have to use it, but if you use it, you are voluntarily saying that I am part of a United States, which is the connected to D.C., the District of Columbia. And so it's federal, regional, right. Incidentally, Columbia comes from, I question myself, seriously, I question whether there ever was such a man as Christopher Columbus. I don't think there was. I think you can make a very good case that there was no such a man. And the mere fact that he had 3 ships bothers me, because everything the Illuminati has always done has always been in 3s. They divided Jerusalem between the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians. It's always 3s. They have divided the world between the first world, second world, and third world. And if you understand Illuministic philosophy, everything is always done in 3s. So when Christopher Columbus comes over, and it's Christo Columbia. And if you understand that the Illuminati call themselves Columbians, the Columbian faction of the Illuminati, that's where we get Columbia University, Columbia Pictures, Columbia, all the different institutions of Columbia. Incidentally, you've got Columbia Broadcasting, which is CBS, and the symbol for CBS is, of course, the I on the dollar bill. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And synthesis, right, exactly. That's the 3. Hegelian dialectics, and...
Right. My own question. You had leader people in the posterity, which were the original state citizens, immediate derivative of that citizenship as citizens of the United States, full definition of citizenship versus Levi. Then you had the 14th Amendment citizens who were non-white and everybody else. And then in 1935, under Social Security, they merged them all together. And that's the 3rd citizenship right there under Social Security.
No, that's true, yes. And as I said, that whole subject deserves a whole evening of intelligent discussion, but I'm not into that right now. What were you going to say? Yeah.
Michael Hessemann here with a very brief comment on, actually, Jordan, are you through, or you have more of your talk?
Okay. I'm not through. I got another 3 hours, but I'm through for the moment.
Yeah. A very interesting question here. Who financed Adolf Hitler? Who financed the Bolshevik Revolution? Who financed the First World Communist International, Marx and Engels? Who financed them to write the Communist Manifesto, which is basically word by word the bankers' manifesto for ruling the world? Wall Street, the Vatican, and South Africa put up money and gold to finance the Bolshevik Revolution. The Russian industry after the Civil War in Russia, after the revolution, was built by Wall Street. I mean, the major Russian companies were built by major American counterparts. Westinghouse built a dynamo factory in Moscow, which became the backbone of the Russian heavy electrical machinery. International Harvester built the Kirov tractor plant. Later, all the C-34s were built. Oh, that's much later. The Standard Oil of somewhere built the Volga oil fields. So one by one, all the major Russian industry were built by Wall Street at a time when the world capitalist countries were ostensibly being very afraid of the Russian revolutions spilling over, spreading around the world. Basically, we see this same pattern of financial power bringing in leaders, countries, creating wars that has been repeating itself over and over again. I would like to introduce Michael Hessemann here, famous UFO publisher and author from Germany, with this simple question. I mean, who financed Adolf Hitler's rise to power? Any similarities with the Bolshevik Revolution? With any inputs into our conspiratorial view of reality here?
One thing is sure, I didn't. Now, indeed, the situation in Germany was comparable to the situation you have in the moment in the USA. It was not as worse as my co-speaker here mentioned, but the Germans were eating out of garbage cans, at least not all of them. But they had a major economical crisis like you have in the moment in the USA. And this situation, whenever we look in history, was the best ground for a fascist dictatorship to take over power. So when the economy goes down, if you have so many million people out of work, as you definitely have in the moment, be careful. Be careful, because these people are absolutely dissatisfied, and they possibly are looking for a strong leader who takes them out of this situation. So whenever this situation of economy is manipulated, it doesn't happen by itself. And indeed, these people who have a few $1 million on the bank accounts in Switzerland, in Swiss francs, they are earning the most out of it. And because the American dollar compared to the franken, the Swiss currency, in the last 7 years, lost 50% of its value. I can say it from the Deutschmark in 1985, for example, in 1985 or 1988, the American dollar was about 3 Deutschmarks. In the moment, it is 139. So if these people in 1985 transferred, for example, $1 billion to Switzerland, changed it in Swiss franken, they doubled it now, up to now. If they change it back to American dollars, they are getting now 2 billion American dollars, and this is quite a profit in 5 years. So there are people who really make profit and who can make profit with the weak American dollar and the catastrophic American economical situation right now. If I follow the history of George Walker Bush, there are some remarkable correlations. Remember the Bay of Pig affair. The code name of the Bay of Pig affair was Operation Zapata. And at this time, George Walker Bush was the head of a cover company called Zapata Oil Company. And the major ship involved in the Bay of Pig affair had the name Barbara. Do you know who Barbara Bush is? Of course you know. So the first memorandum sent to a CIA official after the JFK assassination on November 22nd, I think it was, 22nd or 23rd, please correct me. 22nd, okay. November 22nd, 1963, went to Mr. George W. Bush from the Central Intelligence Agency, Isn't it strange? Indeed, the operatives of the Operation Zapata and the JFK assassination were nearly the same people, including Mr. Hunt from the CIA, the guy who lost the lawsuit in Florida in the 1970s against the Liberty Lobby. The Liberty Lobby publishing the magazine Spotlight, published an article by Victor Marchetti, a former CIA agent, who claimed in this article that a CIA operative named Hunt, I don't know the first name, I don't remember the first name, I think George Hunt or something like that, Mr. Hunt, H-U-N-T, was the CIA coordinator of the JFK assassination, and that he was in Dallas at the time and whatever, and Mr. Hunt sued against the Liberty Lobby as the publishers of the Spotlight magazine, and he claimed he was in Washington, D.C., and his family and his children were witnesses. Unfortunately, he never presented his children or his wife as witnesses on court, what is quite strange. Indeed, one time he mentioned that he had a discussion with his children who attacked him because they believed he could have been involved in a JFK assassination, and he claimed in front of the court that this was one of the damages created through the Spotlight article, but his children and his family do not trust him anymore. So if they were present in Washington when they watched the JFK assassination on TV, how can they accuse him of being involved in it? And indeed, this lawsuit was won by the Liberty Lobby, and there's a fantastic book published about it called Plausible Denial. This book is not available in the USA anymore because nobody wanted to publish it. I bought it in London, in England. It is published by a British publisher. And, well, in this book you find a lot of interesting facts, and you find the clear evidence that the CIA and this division involved in the Operation Zapata was also involved in the JFK assassination, and that the same people active in the Operation Zapata were active in the JFK assassination. So George Walker Bush indirectly or directly had to do with the JFK assassination. And now, what the Americans did 12 years ago, they elected for President Ronald Reagan, who was a nice puppet, and the strings were in the hand of George Walker Bush. And he was president for the USA for 12 years. And this is, you know, he is nearly the king of the USA. A president being in the office for 12 years is something. And if he is re-elected, if he will be re-elected, and we all pray that he will not, he was president more or less because Ronald Reagan, you know, was last operated by him for 16 years. And he was the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, a Gestapo-like organization. This is fine. You know, as a German, I wonder how you can survive in this country. Who financed Adolf Hitler? Indeed, the German industry did. The Social Democratic Party of Germany published a very interesting cartoon about Adolf Hitler in 1931 in the election campaigns. Adolf Hitler, you know, had this hand movement always, and he said, "Millions are standing behind me." And you see a hand coming from the background, the banker's hand, you know. You see the suit and everything, you know, and having millions of Deutschmark in the hand, or Reichsmark at that time, millions of Reichsmark in the hand, and Hitler made this movement to get it. The millions were standing behind me. It is sure that these people who financed Adolf Hitler, including the Krupp Company, including the Flick Company and other leading major German companies, also finance the West German government right now. And a few years ago, we had a big affair because the entire federal government, including Helmut Kohl, Otto Graf Lambsdorff, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, and all the sons of bitches who are our German government in the moment, were financed by the Flick Company. All German parties got millions of Deutschmark by the Flick Company, so they were still manipulated the German policy. And you will see how Germany reacted against the protest of all our citizens in the Gulf War. and paying $8 billion to America and not getting back the $4 million we didn't need, we can always say, my God, Germany was involved on both sides. Of course, we traded weapons to Saddam Hussein. We sent money to George Bush. We sent money to Saudi Arabia. We sent money to Israel. And everybody was fighting on our cost, meaning the taxpayers' cost in Germany and meaning the monetary funds given by the big companies who, on the other hand, are earning by selling weapons. Who financed Adolf Hitler? The bankers did. The bankers did, but not only the German bankers, but the international companies, and they were organized in the Freemason lodges. And not all Freemason lodges were arrested and put into the concentration camps, only those who did not finance Adolf Hitler. Indeed, in the Freemasonry, we have a wide field and we have concurring organizations. And we have the so-called Grand Lodge of England, and we have the Scotch Rite high degree Freemasons, which originated from the Knight Templars after the fight against the Templars by the Papal forces and the French king Philip the Beautiful. He is called in the history books Philip the Beautiful. I don't know why. Some of them escaped to Scotland and merged into the Johannite communities there, and indeed reappeared in history as promoters of the Stuart dynasty, and later in the British revolutions and whatever, and from there started and financed the French Revolution. So these are the Scotch Rite high-degree Masonry orders, but as a concurrence to them, the Protestant Church of England promoted another kind of order, the so-called Grand Lodge of London. And so we have two groups of Freemasons, and only one group, the group associated with the Grand Lodge of England, was arrested and put into concentration camps. But a high degree Freemasons, the Scotch Rite Freemasons, they could operate in the Third Reich. Not many of you know what the word SS really means. According to our history books, SS means Schutzstaffel, what means protection crew, or however you translate it, protection service. But indeed it means, and the esoteric name was Black Sun. And Black Sun, Schwarze Sonne in German. Of course, Black Sun doesn't give SS, but Schwarze Sonne is the German terminology. And do you know that Adolf Hitler got his so-called inspiration to become the German leader when he stood in front of the Spear of Destiny in the Vienna Hofburg in, I think it was 1920, about 1920, in the Schatzkammer of the Vienna Hofburg, right? And the first thing he did before he started World War II was that he invaded Austria and got the Holy Lance, or the Spear of Destiny. The spear, according to mythology, was the spear touched with the blood of Jesus, and brought it to... Yeah?
The first place he visited was the museum.
Yeah, the first, of course.
He spent a whole night alone in the museum.
That's right. And then the spear was taken to Nuremberg, and Nuremberg was the site of the big Parteitage of the NSDAP, of the National Socialist Workers' Party. Parteitag means party day. And the only man who could operate, who had the black magic education to operate with the Spear of Destiny, was a guy called Heydrich. And he was the leading guy in the SS, and later he became the Reichsprotektorat. And Reich was the German Empire. And when Heydrich was assassinated in 1942, the fate of the Third Reich made a 180-degree turn, and after that we had Stalingrad and everything, and Hitler was defeated 3 years later. So everybody was amazed about the power of the German army between 1939 and 1942. Adolf Hitler really seemed to be undefeatable. One blitzkrieg after another, and one country defeated after another, and suddenly in 1942 his luck his war luck, suddenly disappeared, and he was defeated by one army after the other, and one battle after another. So what happened? Indeed, Heinrich was killed, the only guy who really was able to operate the Spear of Destiny, because according to this hundreds of years old legend, whoever has the Spear of Destiny has the fate of the world in his hands. And if you use it, it is like the art of convenance. If you use it in a war, you're undefeatable. You're definitely undefeatable. And Heinrich Himmler was the Reichsleader of the Black Sun Order, or SS, and he chose the triangular castle in Wewelsburg near Paderborn in Germany as the seat of the Black Sun Order. I'm talking about the SS, and there are plans even published. I gave away all the copies of my magazine, unfortunately, but we published it in my magazine now. The plan, he wanted to widen, he wanted to make this castle being the city of a really SS colony, and the triangle was planned to be the head of the spear, and all the architectural plans of this city he wanted to build around the Wewels Castle had to form, with alleys and everything, of a spear. And the Wewels Castle, they had an underground chamber where the leaders of the SS performed black magic rituals. And on the ground of this central room was a relief of the Black Sun symbol, as we know it from ancient Tibet. It is elaborated. Unfortunately, we don't have a cupboard here. It is an elaborated form of swastika, not with 4 but with 8 Balkans. So, indeed, black magic played quite a big role, and it was one of the reasons why the gypsies were put in the concentration camps, was that they all predicted that if Germany is starting a war, after some years it will be defeated and many, many people will die and the country will be totally destroyed. And indeed, the beginning of the gypsy assassination in the concentration camps was these predictions. It started like a witch hunting in the Middle Ages, and they first arrested the clairvoyant gypsies and later all the rest of the gypsies because they had clairvoyant genetic material, all of them, and they became a danger for the normal Germans. It is back in Vienna. But not the original one. It's a copy in Vienna right now. The original one is still in the hands of a black magic lodge. The Spear of Destiny in the Vienna Hofburg right now is nothing more than a copy. Hitler hid it in the underground chambers beneath the castle of Nuremberg, and it was found by the Americans at April 22nd, I think, 1945. And it was the day when Hitler committed suicide. He committed suicide 1 hour after the Spear of Destiny was found. Yeah.
But because we were actually going that ran the situation, Hilder, before the brainwave, never know what really was and going to the same thing. Whether it's the influence out of the Tibetans,
I fully agree.
that controlled the whole thing, all the way down the line.
When Berlin was conquered by the Russians, they found hundreds of bodies of dead Tibetan monks in Berlin, and officially nobody knew what they were doing in Berlin. And I asked my father, who spent some time in 1944 in Berlin, And he told me also that there were many Tibetans in Berlin at that time. And indeed, quite early in the 1930s, they sent an expedition to Tibet to contact the black magic lodges there. Nobody of you possibly know where the NSDAP originated from, but in the 1920s, they formed a black magic society in Munich called the Thule Society, Thule. And the Thule Society was a group of very, very rich, financial influential people who came together to practice black magic and to widen their power through the black magic techniques. And what these people actually did I give you a copy of my magazine?
Yes.
Can you give it? Oh, unfortunately. Otherwise, I could show you some pictures. I'm hoping what I said. Do you have it nearby in the car? Oh, okay. Unfortunately. So I can't show you pictures for it. But what happened with the Thule Society was that one of the most powerful men among them was Mr. Eckert. And Mr. Eckert, together with Haushofer, were practical disciples of red hat Tibetan monks. There are two orders in Tibet. We have the yellow-headed monks. The Dalai Lama is one of them. They are very peaceful and very calm, and they practice white magic. And we have the red-headed Tibetan monks, the Tantrists. They are in connection with Agartha, not with Shambhala. Shambhala is the good pole, and Agartha is the negative pole. And these red-headed Tibetan monks, the order was founded by Padmasambhava, one of the most powerful black magicians ever existed on our planet. They accepted the invitations by Haushofer and Eckert, and some of them came to Germany, teaching disciples in Germany. Haushofer and Eckert were taught by Germany, and these were the leading forces in the Thule Society. And indeed, this society, they found Hitler because he was a good speaker, a demagogic person with a special charisma. And when Eckert died in 1933 or 1933, he said, "Don't worry, I will go, but we have him, and he is the puppet, and I was the person who played the music. He will dance for." And Haushofer developed a plan of geopolitics. Adolf Hitler totally followed in World War II. So this Thule Society in, I think, 1924 or 1925, when the economic situation in Germany was as bad as in the moment in America, they founded a Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, German working class party, to manipulate the masses. And as I said, 2 years later, they found Adolf Hitler to control this Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, and he had the brilliant idea to call it National Socialist German Working Party. But this party, this NSDAP, was founded and consisted of members of the Thule Society. And Hess was a member of the Thule Society, and many leading members of the NSDAP, not Goebbels and not Goering, but all the people in the background.
Mike, let me
Yes?
grab that for you.
Well, so I'd like to talk about this. The Skull and Bones Society was started in 1832. The symbology of the skull and bones and the symbology of Adolf Hitler's Third Reich meld.
And the color. Every SS man of the higher ranking SS forces, Waffen SS, for example, they had a skull and bone symbol. He had a collar. It was a part of their uniform. Skull and bone. And the skull and bone originally was a Templar symbol. We find skull and bones on many Templar cemeteries in Scotland, in France, everywhere. It was the symbol of, well, there are many myths where it originally comes from, but some people say it was the symbol of Jacques de Morlaix, because he was buried in this way. At least he was buried in this way. Other people say it was the symbol of the son of the widow, Hiram Abiff, the king of Tarshish in Phoenicia. At least it is a very, very old Freemasonry and Templar symbol. And the Totenkopf, as we say in Germany, it means skull and bones. The Totenkopf symbol was one of the most powerful symbols of SS. But let me first...
Very interesting remark here. Hitler was deep, the Germany was deep, the German elite was deep into metaphysics. They sent several hundred, if not thousands of expeditions to Tibet. They brought a lot of books that they bought, stole, or bartered with the monks there. Some of them from caves in Tibet. There are many caves. It's a very cavernous country there. They were translated into German. For the first time, it was a major translation effort. Out of these books, they were able to reconstruct ancient forgotten sciences. The Mercury Vortex anti-gravity drives were basically found in Tibetan literature. The drives that power these craft that we were showing in the photographs here. Hitler had a convent of witches close to his headquarters. There were Tibetan monks, there were mystics, there were psychics. They were very heavily into metaphysics, and actually there's a very good book on, I forgot the name of, The Spear of Destiny, and one other book by the same author. Yeah, about
Owls and Berger, Morning of the Magicians.
Morning of the Magicians. Yes, and the Holy Blood, Holy Grail. The black sun that appears in German mythology and in German secret symbology, the symbol of Agartha, it's very interesting actually, because in the Urantia book, they give the picture of the universe that basically resembles the island of paradise is a lenticular island in the center of these local cluster of a dozen galaxies that holds them in place. And the seat of the Trinity is on the top half of the island. The energy lines, the energy capillary system, the energy supply system of the universe consists of these kind of magnetic looking lines that exit out of the top portion of paradise and encompass the whole universe and enter back into the lower or nether paradise, as the Urantia book calls it. And of the many things that are not revealed in the Urantia book, the one that I found most interesting is the nether paradise. They don't say who or what resides on the nether paradise. Just thinking in analogies, if the Trinity resides on top of the paradise, then maybe there may be another important, equally important and powerful factor or entity that resides on nether paradise that they chose for the time being not to reveal to the planet. And if energies are entering like this, physically this is a totally black body, so basically the black sun is an excellent image, a symbol for the nether paradise, for whatever factor resides there.
You can read this in the ancient Vedic scriptures of India. There's a whole series of books you can get at your local Hare Krishna temple. It is called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is one of the most important holy scriptures of India, the Bhagavata Purana. And in the Bhagavata Purana, you can read of the higher world, our earth, and the nether world. And in the higher world, the Suras, or gods, are living, and this is the world of the sun and of the light. And in the underworld, the Asuras, or demons, are living, and this is the world of the black sun dominated by the black sun. And and they know about it, and they teach about it. I don't know why Rancia doesn't, but we have this netherworld or underworld model in the Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, and they describe very well how horrible these 7 Azuric planets or 7 levels of the underworld indeed are, and the black magicians are communicating with these kind of worlds. But let me quickly add some things to what I said before. Indeed, these Tibetan monks were closely cooperating, and they gave a lot of documents and books to the Hitler regime. And I do not believe that the Hitler Flying Saucer program was based on alien technology, but in my opinion, it is based on, let me say, Tibetan technology. Why? Because we have descriptions of the so-called Vimanas, of airplanes flying on the base of Mercury 5,000 years ago, constructed by the ancient Indian people, in these ancient holy books of Tibet. And they are described with all possibilities also in the Tanju and other ancient Tibetan books. But some people wanted to ask questions about what I said before, and before I give the microphone away, I want to satisfy these 4 people, or 5 people. So let me start with the gentleman here. George Bush is a member of it, I know. He still is.
You know that, Michael, one other thing that we expand on that.
In the tomb at Yale University, and there is that building, they have the skull and bones on the padlock, and it was broken into, and there was an article about that break-in. I think it was by Rosenblum, was it, in Esquire? They entered into one particular room in the Skull and Bones fraternity. It's a Faustian financial fraternity, coming here in 1832, and operates under the Russell Trust, which the Wackenhut SS operates under and Life magazine operates under. The room that they broke into had all of this Nazi paraphernalia. It was loaded with Nazi paraphernalia and symbols, swastikas, etc. And this bridges into Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, author of, our co-editor of Lucifer and publisher of Lucifer magazine. So maybe you could expand on that Skull and Bones Faustian financial fraternity and the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler, and are we not in the Fourth Reich of the rich?
I'm a great admirer of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, but because she was the first who got the secret teachings from Shambhala, not from Agadi, and she was the founder of what we call today the New Age movement, of the externalization of the hierarchy and of the positive hierarchy and the knowledge from Shambhala. But of course, you know, the knowledge about the truth, evolution of mankind, and so on, this is a matter of fact, and it's identical in the traditions of the black magic orders. You can't have two histories of mankind, two different histories of mankind, and so on. And so, of course, a little later, some black magic fraternities like the Oriental Templar Order, OTO in England, like the Thule Society I already mentioned, like the Aleister Crowley Silver Star Order and so on, appeared as a counterpole, and they used the same ideology, but they turned over the bodhisattva aspect. They excluded the bodhisattva aspect, what means to serve for the evolution of mankind and to use the knowledge only in the service of the evolution of mankind. Indeed, many of the occult black magic lodges, including the Freemasons, were very upset about philosophy and about the externalization of secret knowledge in these books by Madame Blavatsky, because this meant that they were not property of a special lodge and given under initiation and under special conditions anymore. But I want to answer the three more questions we had. One was from the gentleman in the back. Are you talking about the Tuk Brotherhood? Haushofer. Dona Pava, yeah. Indeed, in the 1920s, there was a very popular book in Germany about Agatha. It is called Animals, Men, and Gods, and it is written, I think, by Ossendowski. Beastman, yeah, Beast, okay, Tiere, Menschen, Götter in Germany. Tier, you can translate beast or animal. So I translated in one way, and okay. And indeed, this book influenced, of course, in some way, these movements, because it was a very popular bestseller in Germany. I found one copy, my copy, in the library of my own grandfather, who was a member of the Buddhist Society in Berlin at that time, and which did not work with the red hat Tibetans, but worked with the Sri Lankan Buddhists, which were white magicians. And of course, you know, Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, they tried everything to locate the Lord of the World and the Viagati Brotherhood, and possibly really successfully did so. But, you know, other things happened on a very, very above top secret level, and only the inner circle of the Nazi movement learned about it, and many of these people disappeared after World War II or died after World War II, so it's very difficult to get concrete information. The only thing I can say for sure is that there were some Tibetan expeditions, a few dozens of it, and possibly not a few thousands of it, as my friend Vladimir said, because, you know, in 10 years, they did a few dozens of it, about 4 or 5 a year, but not 400 or 500 a year. And they brought a lot of manuscripts over and wise people, monks, who could read them and interpret them. This is a matter of fact. But what we really found out, I'm not talking about the flying saucers now, the flying saucer program is quite documented, but what we really did, nobody knows for sure because the people mostly involved in it, they don't live anymore.
I have a proposal. If it is a brief question, it has to be repeated for the camera can hear it. If it would be a longer question, it would be better to come here and see the question to the microphone.
Oh, I can repeat it at the microphone. I repeat it, okay.
And it points out how current day this fire is stuff new. My father owns General Motors in Austria. Operated from the Royal Palace. 2 days before the unsplit, Hitler took over Austria. My father's palace as their headquarters. Austria and Germany have refused to pay a claim of $20-30 million, which I have pursued legally, and now my lawyers in Vienna say we must start up publicity. And I thought it would be interesting to tell you that the claim looks very good. The Jewish community in Los Angeles is getting behind this and will embarrass the government. They recently asked me for documentation of the connection between American financing of Hitler and this episode with my family, which ties in the Brown Harriman. My father's money ended up there. My question is, I understand there's a connection between the Dalai Lama, Tibetan Buddhism, and the Pleiadians. Is there any connection between the Pleiadians and the Nazis? No. This is another part of the game.
You have a white movement. Okay. He wanted to know if there's any connection between the Nazis and the Pleiadians, because he learned there's a connection between the Dalai Lama and the Pleiadians. And I said, no, these are two different parts of the game, two different games. We have one team and another team fighting against each other. We have the black team and the white team, and then that's the ball game. And in this ball game, the Dalai Lama and the Pleiadians are playing in one team, and Adolf Hitler and the Shambhala people and the black people and the black lodgers are playing in the other team. And the football they are playing for is our planet and is mankind and the future of mankind. It is the evolution of mankind. It is the question if we survive on a higher level of evolution or if we live under Orwellian, George Orwell, Orwellian dictatorship for the next 1,000 years in chains. The programmed bio-robots who are not allowed to have a free will, and we all got a little pre-taste how this can be in Germany between 1933 and 1945, when 80 million intelligent people were just brainwashed and formed into one controlled puppet, working under the principle of Führerbefehl, wir tragen die Folgen, what means Führer give an order, we follow you blind. And no, Führerbefehl, wir folgen dir was the original quotation, but some Germans made a joke out of it and said Führerbefehl, wir tragen die Folgen, what means Führer give the order and we take the results. And the original one was Führer give the order and we follow you blindly. So this was a little pretext, but the Pleiadians and the Dalai Lama is playing in another team. If you want to say the good guys and the bad guys, you can definitely say that the Dalai Lama belongs to the good guys and the Pleiadians too. And we have a very strong Tibetan-Venusian connection also. For example, George Adamski the guy you definitely know here in America, the first guy who had contact with flying saucer people in 1952, he spent his childhood in Tibet. He had a Tibetan teacher, but of course a yellow-hat Tibetan teacher. Now you.
The statement is that one man whose name has been omitted here at the time of Hitler's becoming Chancellor of Germany is Hjalmar Schacht. And Hjalmar Schacht was the man who actually performed the miracle of putting everyone to work overnight. It was under Hitler's order. There were empty factories. At that time, out of a population of 80 million people in 1933 in Germany, 5 million were living, that is 5 million families, were living in caves dug in the ground. That's how poor they were. And yet there were empty factories which had the capability of producing goods because they had done it only a few years before when Germany had been exporting so very much. So Hjalmar Schacht conceived the idea of issuing script. And so they ordered the people back into the factories immediately. They started producing. The script would be good in 90 days for real money. And in that 90 days' time, they produced the goods, sold them, shipped them, and got hard currencies back. Then they were able to make good on that script. And I might further add that Schacht was so considered to be such a genius on this, it probably was the brightest banker that ever lived in Germany, even more than Flick. He was given time as a result of the Nuremberg trials, even though he had never fired a shot in anger or done anything except to provide this level of genius. By the way, the people that couldn't work in factories because they were non-skilled were put in another service called the Arbeitsdienst. And they were there, instead of shouldering rifles, they shouldered shovels. And yeah. Well, at one point, it was sort of preparatory to yeah. Well, I did have a question. Well, yeah. Well, as I prefaced, I had both a statement and a question. And my question is very simple and it's very short. The Pleiadians, how could they possibly be from the Pleiades if there are no planets in the Pleiades? And it's clear there are none because there's not a star there old enough to have planets. And that's why all around those stars there is a glowing blue haze. That material in about 1 billion years will have separated itself out and collected itself into planets, and then there will be planets in the Pleiades. The Pleiadians, if indeed they're from that part of the galaxy, are probably nearby, but they're not Pleiadians. That's a misnomer.
Was it a question or statement? Indeed, we have a mention of visitors from the Pleiades in all the ancient mythology, and of course it is a problem how to coordinate it with the astronomical facts, but indeed the Pleiades are a star group out of 250 different suns, and I think out of 250, according to Billy Meyer, 250, according to the astronomers. Okay. And I think out of between 130 and 250 suns, possibly one or the other has inhabitable planets. And the big ones we see surrounded by blue haze, maybe not Alcune and so on. I don't know for sure, I'm not, I haven't been there the last 28 years. And I don't know it for sure, but coming to your question.
And it's very good history there. But when I open this up to the whole panel, now we know why we have a problem. It's almost a problem. Irreversible with the Committee of 300, the trilaterals, complete control, power, and money. We just wanted everybody to get up on mountaintops and wait for it to clear. Well, what can you do? What ideas do you have to change it? You get George Bush out and nothing because he only desires to take his right for a right. He just wants more power with the United Nations.
I'd like to answer that question.
Let's put a question to the camera.
And I'd like to give an answer to that.
Let's repeat the question for the camera.
All right, the gentleman is asking this question in lieu of this massive conspiracy and in lieu of the fact that we are very far down the line, you might say on the brink of defeat. How can we rescue the planet? How can we have victory from the jaws of defeat? I talked earlier about inciting a revelation to avoid a revolution. If, in fact, there is a staged or planned alien invasion that's coming down sometime after October 12th of this year, if we take this particular story and we spread this story throughout the planet through individuals like Michael Hessemann, if we go to the Japanese with TV Asahi, Nippon Television, TBS, we go to the London Times, we go to Die Welt in South Africa, we go to the various major publications of the world, and we do a taping on this. If the tape that is being done on us tonight is edited down and distributed, if we spring this trap that has been set for the people of the planet before the ignorant and the arrogant and the apathetic step in it, and it's irreversible, then it is not we that will be caught. It is they that will be caught, trapped, and exposed. So we must use that which is available to us. I'm a talk show host. You can make a call to Larry King. You can make a call to an individual who has a massive audience. You can literally fan the fires of this particular exposure and burn down their structure before this thing happens. This trap has to be sprung. It has to be sprung now. It has to be, yes. Oh, there's no question. Yes, the man is asking, do I not think that the media is controlled? Yes. But we must use it's like Lenin said when he came in with Trotsky in those sealed boxcars into Russia to foment the Soviet revolution. Somebody asked him, he said, well, how can you do this? You don't have an army. My God, how can we possibly do this, right?
I have the millions behind me.
He says, we will use their army. And in this particular case, we must use their media, their machinery, their money, and their movement against them. It's as simple as that.
You have a list of Disedent books.
What you're saying is you're going to notify them before it happens, because if you notify them now, they're going to say, don't be daft.
If we spring the trap before it falls, and they then put forth this event, they're going to get trapped in it. That's only if they do. If this trap falls without the exposure, yes, we're finished. Yes.
George Washington's prophecy talks about the third age. This is the war that is coming down now, where we're in now, and according to this prophecy, we're going to win.
I've heard of George Washington's prophecy, yes.
I just wanted to say one thing, that the one thing a conspiracy cannot deal with They can deal with anything. They can deal with rebellions within the ranks. They can take you out on a city street coming out of a restaurant. They can deal with anything. They can buy you off or kill you off. The one thing a conspiracy or a plot or a scheme cannot afford to deal with is exposure. And there is no need to worry about how are we going to get on the national press, how are we going to be able to get through to the Time magazine. We don't need to. The greatest form of exploitation is word of mouth. People hearing this thing tonight, talking to their friends who will talk to someone else, and before you know it, you can have a revolution in this country. So, exposure.
Read the word.
Yes.
I read the text as much as you can.
Jordan has been trying here for a number of years. What we have to do is take the information that he has. For instance, if we get a map of Washington, D.C., and it shows the streets, it's clearly laid out. And then we take a picture of the goat of Mendez on a slide and do an overlay on this, and it will fit perfectly. It will fit perfectly. If we show on film a picture of this Illuminati symbol, which existed on May 1st, 1776, the communists have used since the beginning, since the League of Just Men formed the Communist League in 1848. If we show this to the American public, and we prove that it existed prior to the foundation of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, we will blow them out of the water. All of the evidence that is needed is right here. We simply have to professionalize this and bring it to the public in mass.
In my original comments, I didn't finish what I had started. I wanted to talk just for a couple of moments about how symbols are used. Symbols and emblems we see every day are manipulating our thinking, and of course we know that television and motion picture have symbols continually, but classic example is here on the front of the American dollar bill. This one's so small, probably no one's seen this one. Up here on the corner of the dollar bill, and I'll show it to you later if you want to see it, there is a little owl sitting up here on the edge of the one, a little owl, and if you get a magnifying glass, it becomes very clear. The owl is a symbol of the Bohemian Society that meets every once a year in July up in off Russian River up in Northern California. The Bohemian Society is made up of all of these master criminals that make the mafia look like child's play. These people are master criminals, and they're printing your money. They are guiding your life every day, and we don't even realize it through symbols. I'll show you the little owl. Now, I've got pictures. I have color pictures of all of the American presidents living and dressed up in costumes like the Ku Klux Klan. They all have long cloaks on and pointed headdresses, and this is the American presidents. And standing before a large bonfire, worshiping the owl, and there's like a 35-foot owl behind the bonfire. These are color pictures with all the American presidents dressed like Ku Klux Klansmen worshiping the owl. And the article in Elle magazine said that the owl represented wisdom because it sees things in the dark. It knows things that you don't know, and that's why it's wise, because it can see things in the dark, and that's why the owl's on the dollar bill. Symbols are, I want to give you an example, just some quick examples about the Royal Arch Freemasons that were so instrumental in the 1770s of founding this country. The last of their moves that they needed to make was in Pennsylvania, where they signed the Declaration. And Pennsylvania today is called the Keystone State because it's the keystone in the Royal Arch of the Royal Arch Freemasonry. This thing has been laid down, and I'm trying to explain to you, this whole country of America is nothing more than one more key in a very large movement that has been in existence for hundreds of years, And we're now seeing the climax to this whole conspiracy. The World Freemasonry has as its symbol and emblem a word, Ordo ab Chao. And in Switzerland, at the world headquarters for Freemasonry, which is found in the same building with the United Nations and the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, which was the Impossible Mission Force of the old Mission Impossible. IMF, or Impossible Mission Force, is the International Monetary Fund, which is an impossible mission that they are trying to accomplish, and I think they're doing a good job. But if you understand the symbols which are around you every day, in oil companies, for instance, you have the Shell oil, but if you look at the shell, you will see it's actually a sunrise between two triangles. And I've written the company, and they agree, yes, it's a Masonic symbol of the Masonic sunrise between the two triangles, which was the symbol of the Bilderberger group. And the Shell, let's see, and then the Union oil, you have the Union oil, which is a round orange globe with the 76. And the commercial says, get the spirit of 76. What are we talking about? We're talking about the spirit of the Illuminati revolution, which was America, the spirit of 1776. And the round orange globe is the sun which is revolving, which is a symbol of revolution, the rising sun of a dawn of a new day, and as occult Freemasonic symbols. Arco, if you see the Arco sign, is the pyramid from the air without the keystone, and without the chief cornerstone in the middle. It goes back to Jason and the Arconauts. Ordo ab Chao, order out of chaos, which is remember the old television show Get Smart. Get Smart had chaos on the one side and control on the other, and that was the outline of what Adam Weishaupt said. If you can cause enough war, enough violence, enough bloodshed, and finance enough revolutions and trouble throughout the world, the entire world is going to be so frightened and come to the point where they're going to have to be on their knees and give up in order to have a new one world government to stop the violence. And that was the plan. Give the people so much bloodshed they're going to be on their knees begging you for a new world order, for peace and security. It's all been planned a long time ago. As a matter of fact, there were three books that I have printed in the 70s. Cosmic Conspiracy is one of them, where Stan Devo talked about how Yugoslavia must be destroyed. And this is the 1970s. Yugoslavia will be destroyed, and it's going to be divided, and he explained the different groups that are going to be divided against each other and divide and conquer. And there were two other books that mentioned that Yugoslavia will have to go before the new order, and it has something to do with families, old powerful families in that area. And there's some new alliances being formed behind the scenes. Everything that you see, and this is why I'm going to leave you with, every time you see on television and radio and hear in the news media about violence, bloodshed, like the gang stuff that's going on in Los Angeles, it's very interesting. Did you know that gang graffiti has Masonic symbols in it? Very powerful black Masonic symbols, and the Latino has some very powerful Scottish Rite symbolism in it. And there's something going on here with these gangs. And when you hear the government make statements, when you hear politicians make a statement that they cannot seem to get their hands on crime, that it just seems to be out of control, and they just can't seem to get their hands get a handle on the drug problem and the crime, that is a lie. They got their hands on Adolf Hitler when they wanted to. They have total control over the Soviet Union. They can break it anytime they wish. And if you don't pay your taxes, they'll chase you all the way down into the Amazon jungles and bring you back screaming and make an example out of you. And if they want you, no matter who you are, they will find you and deal with you publicly so no one else will get out of line. So when you hear that drugs are being sold and they can't get a hold on it and they can't do anything about the crime, it's because they don't want to. Crime keeps people frightened, and frightened people are in subjection. Right. Yes. Right. And then they're going to take you away. Right. I know that.
We know that.
Mhm.
Everything you buy is barcoded.
Sure.
The barcode, the 3 digits on the barcode that you don't see are 666.
I know that.
You read Revelation, it's showing you
I
that
understand.
no man will be able to buy anything unless he's got the mark of the beast.
And one other thing.
And you know where that goes to? It goes to a central computer bank, which is
Right.
based in
Belgium.
Belgium,
Yeah.
which is called
The beast. I understand. Yeah, the beast. One other thing I want to bring to your attention is when you hear in this country them talking, anytime you hear in the media that there's a division or the people want a division between church and state, don't believe it. There is no division in this country between church and state. There ain't never been a division between church and state, and there isn't now. Church and state are merely two hands being operated by one brain. If you get a vision from the Lord and you want to go out and start your own church, you better get a permit from the state. You better get a license from the government to open up a church. Then you can go deal with the Lord, but you get a permit from Caesar first. If you want to get married, you don't go out on a rock out in Texas and talk to the Lord that you're going to get married. You get a permit to get married from the state. And if your marriage doesn't work out, you don't go to God, you go to a judge. You go to the state. And if you understand that the churches are set up like courtrooms, because at church when you go in, all the poor folks sit out here behind the rail, and only the priest can go in to officiate for God, between you and God, which is the same thing in a courtroom, that the people sit out here, there's a long fence with a gate, and the attorneys can go in who are your mouthpiece, or the logos, the word. And they go in and officiate for you and as your mediator between you and God. Yes.
I got a question now that Jordan's standing up here before he finishes.
I'm not going to.
Well, okay. Now, Gerald Ford is, to the best of my knowledge, a practicing Satanist. And can you give us some information about that?
As a matter of fact, I actually saw the picture when I used to go to the Masonic Lodge on Wilshire Boulevard every Friday night at 5 o'clock because the man in charge of the library and research was named Mr. Cook, and he liked me because I knew more about Masonry than he did. And Mr. Brown, who was the head of the lodge, agreed that it would be all right for me to come in on Friday nights, photocopy anything I wish, and stay as long as I please, and photocopy as much of the documents as I wished. I told him I was a writer and I was a researcher, and so I didn't tell him what I was researching, but why. But there is a room upstairs that has these great big large pictures of all the presidents and all the big shots that are Freemasons, and each one of the presidents has beneath his picture, or each one of these pictures has an outline of the accomplishments of the individual. And Gerald Ford had the most entries beneath his name than anyone in the whole room. He is a high degree priest in this order. He's a high degree priest in that black order, this group, that Sufi order. He was, I can't remember them all. I stood there and read all of these things that he's connected to. So when he is portrayed as this bumbling idiot, the only bumbling idiots are us who believe this, like Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer. The closest thing he ever came to a peanut farm is flying over one. He was head of, one of the founding members of the Trilateral Commission. He was the president of the Trilateral Commission, which is probably the most important and most powerful monetary order in the world. And we are told that a peanut farmer, that Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer. Nothing could be further from the truth. Jimmy Carter was a very brilliant and intelligent man, and people don't, I love the way this government always talks about how politicians are always making mistakes. The president made a mistake in the Panama Canal. So-and-so made a mistake in Vietnam. You don't make mistakes in this government that high up. The only mistakes that are being made is if you think they're stupid enough to make mistakes. Whatever you see happening, like Roosevelt said, it was planned that way. So what I'm saying is that I'm going to close with this. This country is being run by criminals, some of the most bloodthirstiest, ravenous criminals the world has ever known, and churches are going along with it because they're no better. They're equally as guilty because you become what you behold. If you see something going on and you don't do anything about it, you become equally as guilty. And these clergymen are always running to the White House to hold the president's hand and kiss his fingers when they go into Vietnam or if they're having a war in the Middle East. And incidentally, the war in the Middle East is between Freemasons. So you had better understand that we are in a very serious time in this history of this country. Freedom is nothing. Freedom is one ball of wax. You're going to be free as a free human being, not because of America. You're going to be free because you're a God-created creature and have the right to be free, and you're going to have to fight for it because that's what the universe demands, is that you be brave enough to fight for your own freedom, educate yourself, and turn the television off. Yes?
George, I need to ask you something. You perceive these blacks coming that are going to across the country every year,
FEMA? Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that they've got something like that going. Yeah.
He talked about the riots. I just came from Las Vegas. Behind the Union Plaza, they had the hundreds of tanks on the flat cars up there. They were put down on the ground. They've since been removed, I believe, out to Nellis. They have been repainted all white, and they have been stenciled United Nations. But there's one other thing that I think that these gentlemen to my right and your left should address, and that is the Wrangel Island situation. I was in Alaska on the air and objected loud and clear and long against the sellout or giveaway of Wrangel Island to the Soviets. Wrangel Island is about the size of two small states. It is above the Soviet Union. It was discovered by Americans, and it was brought in as part of the state of Alaska. It has, as of June 1st, I believe 1990, been given to the Soviet Union or to the Russian Empire in total opposition to the state legislature in Juneau, Alaska. It is part of the United States. It has been given along with 4 other islands and an area that is twice the size of the state of California, which encompasses the largest oil discovery on the planet Earth. And on Wrangel Island, they have 3, to the best of my knowledge, Frankenstein factories, as Vladimir would pronounce it. One used for medical experiments on individuals. I don't know whether it's the creation of the attempt to create a new species, but the other 2 one is for testing atomic radiation on individuals, and still another which is used to bring individuals down into the sea and find out how far and how much they can go without exploding or simply collapsing. And we're talking about an American Auschwitz existent, which is operated by the Soviets or by the Russians. Raoul Wallenberg was supposed to have been brought up there. Abraham Schifrin, who has written the most extensive book on slave camps in the Soviet Union, has described this. John Noble, who I've had on as a guest, has talked, and he was, I think, 9.5 years in a Soviet prison camp, has talked about this. I think it's a subject which must be expanded. We must expose what has gone on at Wrangel Island. I was asked to go out to Wrangel Island, or invited to go out to Wrangel Island, but it is huge. I would only see a portion of it, which would not be, which would not house any of these 3 death camps. But I thought that Vladimir and Al Bielek might have some commentary on this. Vladimir?
Oh, do you have anything on the Wrangel? Actually, I heard here in the United States for the first time about the Wrangel Island, but just summarizing the whole archipelago experience in Russia, with few sentences. In the 60s, even the most leftist and wildest intellectuals in Moscow estimated that, well, maybe 10,000 people were purged during the 30s purges and ended up in the camps. 30 years later, after the works of Solzhenitsyn, it is widely accepted that about 60 million went through the camps and 20 million didn't come back. So we're not talking here about simple runaway private police, party private police, eliminating, exterminating people. We are talking about the same Luciferian agenda scenario for the planet, that they have to limit the population, because by reducing the population, you can play with the population equation and you can redirect the evolution of the planet in a different direction, suitable to the Luciferian hierarchy. All these concentration camps of the 20th century, they appeared almost simultaneously in different countries. They were needed in order to bring down the population, on top of 2 world wars and a lot of small local wars. It's very interesting, fascinating. For example, Billy Murray, in a very rare video interview from Switzerland, gives the Pleiadian prescription for our planet, the population prescription. The Pleiadians, according to their philosophical outlook, satisfy the first paragraph of the Lucifer Manifesto, word by word. They are very highly advanced race, but they view the universe the same way as the Lucifer hierarchy views the universe. There is no universal father with no personality in it. Their prescription is that our planet should have 500 million people, as does their planet Era, which is very similar to Earth. 500 million people. Where should the rest, 5.5, maybe 6 billion already, go? Where should these go? So the Luciferian hierarchy has always used, on top of everything else, has always used the wars, the concentration camps, the elimination of people, in order to shift the evolution of the whole planet in the direction they want. Because if you have less souls on the planet in the same time, then the rest of the souls waiting spend a longer time in the Luciferian schools of the other side. But if you have an overpopulation on a planet, they have to spend all the time here, the souls number being constant, and very short time in the Luciferian schools of the other side, according to Billy Meyer's own revelations. I mean, he's not calling them Luciferian schools, but they belong to the same philosophical division. In the Soviet Union and in Nazi Germany, we find pretty much the same breed. Adolf Hitler said on February 5th, 1941, basically National Socialism and Marxism are the same. The whole of National Socialism is based on it. I think he said that in Munich on February 5th, 1941. This is after the August 23rd, 1939 Commun-Nazi Peace Pact, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Agreement. Today, to the best of my knowledge, there is some 7,668 or so death camps in communist China, with 23 million incarcerated and an attrition rate of 25%, which is 5,750,000 people die every year. And it's rumored that some of them don't always have a nice day. We're talking about people that have been exterminated in China, that the figures go up to somewhat like 80 million plus. That's enough bodies strung in from here end to end that will reach about 2/3 of the way to the surface of the moon that have been killed under this commun-Nazism. And if you read Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution and Wall Street and the Rise of Adolf Hitler by Dr. Anthony Sutton, you'll find total documentation to support that the funding came out of 120 Broadway, and the funding came out of I.G. Farben, and this is all fact. It's not fiction.
And what we have to expose, I believe, here is George Bush's association with Nazism, because Nazism is the button which, when pushed, will set off those people which have been programmed to reverse things back upon the enemy, the Illuminati. And when you ask, what can we do about this? This is what we must do, because the people of this program have been, of this planet, have been programmed. The blacks have been programmed to destruct. Those buttons are already set. We have to spring those traps. We have to expose the genetic engineering of AIDS. We have to expose the UFO conspiracy, because the government has been working with these anti-gravitational flying discs at least since 1945. And it's simply a matter of fact. All we have to do is become professional and put this on film where it belongs, and then take it out and four-wall it, just like it was done with Billy Jack throughout the United States and throughout the world. Yes?